Groom hears shocking confession from bride shortly before ceremony, and his revenge shocks everyone. Michael Henderson felt his stomach churning as he adjusted his bow tie for the 10th time that morning. Only 40 minutes remained until the most important moment of his life, and that nervous feeling everyone said was normal seemed stronger than it should be. He attributed the nerves to the natural anxiety of any groom, never imagining his life was about to collapse in a way he could never have predicted. It was when he stepped out of the small dressing room where he was preparing, seeking a moment of fresh air in the hallway of the event space, that Michael heard female voices coming from the adjacent room. He immediately recognized Jessica's laughter, his bride. She was talking to someone, and the carefree tone of her voice made Michael smile instinctively, even before understanding what was being said. He approached the half-open door without much thought, just out of loving curiosity, perhaps wanting to hear how she was feeling moments before the ceremony. "Oh, Jen, I swear I almost gave up like 3 times this month," said Jessica, and Michael stopped in his tracks, sensing something strange in her tone. "Really? But why?" It was Jennifer's voice, Jessica's best friend, who was to be the maid of honor. There was a pause, and then Jessica let out a low laugh Michael had never heard before. A laugh that carried something he couldn't identify but that made his heart race for all the wrong reasons. "Because it's exhausting to pretend, you know," replied Jessica, and those words cut through Michael like an icy blade. He stood frozen by the door, feeling his legs go weak. His first instinct was to go in there and ask what she meant by that, but something stronger kept him still, an almost sick need to hear more, to understand what was happening. "Pretend what exactly?" asked Jennifer, and Michael could tell by her tone that the friend already knew the answer, that the question was just to continue a conversation they'd probably had before. "Oh, Jen, you know. Pretend I'm in love, that I can't wait to get married, that he's the man of my life." Jessica said this with a terrible lightness, like someone commenting on the weather. "The truth is, Michael is nice, you know. He's a good guy, hardworking, reliable. But I never really loved him, not the way he thinks I do." Michael felt the world spin. He leaned against the wall, breathing slowly, trying to process those words that simply made no sense. 3 years together. 3 years of plans, late-night talks, promises. Everything was unraveling right there in that hallway, 40 minutes before the ceremony. "Then why are you marrying him?" asked another voice, which Michael recognized as Samantha's, another bridesmaid. "Because I need stability, Sam. I'm 28. I'm tired of freelancing, of not knowing if I'll have money at the end of the month. Michael has a good job, his family is stable, he wants kids and a quiet life. It's exactly what I need right now," Jessica explained, and Michael had to cover his mouth with his hand to keep from making a sound. "Besides, he's so predictable, so naive. He believes everything I say. It's almost funny." The 3 of them laughed, and that sound echoed in Michael's soul like shattering glass. He wanted to run away from there. He wanted to never have heard it. He wanted to wake up and find out it was just a horrible nightmare. But his feet remained glued to the floor, and he kept listening, because he needed to know how far that lie that had been his life for the past few years went. "And Brandon?" asked Jennifer, lowering her voice. "Are you still seeing him?" Michael felt his blood run cold in his veins. Brandon, the name hammered in his head. "Who was Brandon?" "Of course I am," replied Jessica, and this time there was something different in her voice, a real emotion that Michael rarely heard when she spoke to him. "Just yesterday we met up. I told Michael I was going to the hall to take care of some last-minute things, but actually I spent the afternoon with Brandon. It was intense." Michael squeezed his eyes shut, feeling nausea rise in his throat. His hands were shaking, and he had to brace himself better against the wall to keep from falling. "Girl, you're crazy," said Samantha, but there was admiration in her tone, not disapproval. "And after the wedding, are you going to keep seeing him?" "Obviously. I'm not going to stop living just because I'm getting married. Michael will be busy being the perfect husband, taking care of me, working to support us. He won't even notice. He's so naive it's almost pitiful sometimes." Jessica laughed again, and this time her friends laughed with her, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Michael stumbled away from the door, heading back to the hall where he was getting ready. He closed the door behind him and stood there staring at his reflection in the mirror. The man staring back at him seemed like a stranger. The black suit was impeccable, the bow tie perfectly straight, his red hair carefully combed. But his eyes were different. There was something broken there that he knew would never be fixed. He sat down heavily in the chair, trying to gather his thoughts. Part of him wanted to confront Jessica immediately, to shout, to demand explanations. But another part, a deeper and more frightening part, was calculating. For the first time in his life, Michael Henderson didn't want to act with his heart. He wanted to act with his head. He picked up his phone with trembling hands and looked at the screen. There were messages from friends wishing him happiness, photos of the groomsmen already in the main hall, a loving message from his mother. Everything so normal, so perfect on the surface, and everything so rotten inside. Michael was 29 years old and worked as a sales manager at a tech company in the city of Aspen in Colorado. He was a simple guy who enjoyed barbecues with friends, walking through the tree-lined streets of the city and planning for the future. He had been raised by loving parents who taught him to believe the best in people, to be loyal, to build relationships based on trust. His life had always been peaceful, without major dramas or complications, until that moment. He met Jessica 3 years earlier at a professional networking event. She worked as a freelance designer and was trying to get clients. Michael was captivated by her energy, the way she talked about her dreams, the joy she seemed to radiate. They started dating 2 weeks after that first meeting, and ever since then Michael had been absolutely certain that she was the person he would spend the rest of his life with, or at least that's what he thought until 5 minutes ago. He stood up and began pacing back and forth in the small hall, his mind racing frantically. Jessica had lied to him. For how long? From the beginning. And who was Brandon? Michael racked his memory, trying to remember if she had ever mentioned anyone by that name, but couldn't find anything. He looked at the clock. 35 minutes until the ceremony. 350 guests were already seated in the chapel of the event space, waiting to see the couple exchange rings and vows of eternal love. Vows that he now knew were completely false on her part. Michael thought about cancelling everything. It would be the simplest thing. Send everyone away, return the gifts, end it before it became official. But something inside him resisted that idea. It wasn't just wounded pride or a desire for revenge, although both were definitely present. It was something deeper. It was the need to expose the truth, to seek justice, to show Jessica and everyone that he wasn't the naive and foolish man she thought he was. He picked up his phone again and opened the messaging app. He had Kevin's number, the photographer they had hired for the wedding. Kevin was more than a professional, he was almost a friend. They had talked a lot during the pre-wedding photo sessions, and Michael knew he could trust him. He quickly typed, "Kevin, are you here already? I need to talk to you urgently. It's important." The reply came in seconds. "Yes, I'm in the Groom's area. Do you need anything?" Michael took a deep breath. What he was about to do would change everything. There was no turning back. But he couldn't just swallow it and move on as if nothing had happened. "Can you come to the hall where I'm getting ready? Room 12. Alone, please." While waiting for Kevin to arrive, Michael went back to the door and peeked into the hallway. Jessica and her friends had left the room, probably already heading to the location where she would wait until it was time to enter the chapel. He wondered how he had been so blind. How many signs had he missed? How many times had she lied to his face and he had believed her, because trusting was the most natural thing for him? A soft knock on the door snapped him out of his thoughts. It was Kevin, holding 2 cameras around his neck with a worried expression on his face. "Michael, are you okay, man?" "You look pale," Kevin said as he entered and closed the door behind him. "No, Kevin, not everything is okay." Michael sat down again, and for the first time since he heard that conversation, he felt his eyes burning with tears he refused to shed. "Not yet. I need to ask you something, and I know it's weird, but do you trust me?" Kevin approached, setting the cameras on a table and sitting facing Michael. "Of course I trust you. What's going on?" Michael told him everything, every word he had heard, every laugh, every revelation. Kevin listened in silence, and as the story progressed, his expression shifted from concern to outrage. "Man, I'm so sorry," Kevin said when Michael finished. I don't even have words. What are you going to do?" "That's where you come in." Michael straightened up in his chair, and there was something different in his eyes now, a cold determination that surprised even himself. "You've taken many photos today, right? Before I arrived, of the bride getting ready, of the guests arriving?" "Yes, about 300 so far, easily." "I need to see those photos, all of them." Kevin seemed confused for a moment, but then he understood. "You want to look for something specific?" "I want to look for evidence. If Jessica is lying about this, there must be more things, some suspicious behavior, something I didn't notice but that was captured in the photos." Michael knew it was a long shot, but he had to try. Kevin picked up one of the cameras and started scrolling through the photos on the small screen. Michael moved closer, watching each image with painful attention. He saw Jessica getting her makeup done, laughing with the bridesmaids, adjusting her dress. He saw the guests arriving, greeting each other. He saw his own mother talking to Jessica's mother, both seemingly happy about this union. And then he saw something that made his heart tighten. It was a photo taken in the garden of the event space, about 2 hours earlier. Jessica was there, still in regular clothes before putting on the wedding dress, and next to her was a man Michael didn't know. They were holding hands, and the way she looked at him, the closeness of their bodies, everything indicated an intimacy that went far beyond simple friendship. "Who is this guy?" Kevin asked, noticing the tension in Michael's body. "Must be Brandon." Michael felt a bitter taste in his mouth as he spoke that name. Kevin scrolled through a few more photos, and there were 3 more of them together. In one, they were talking too close. In another, the man was fixing a strand of Jessica's hair in a clearly affectionate way. In the third, which must have been taken accidentally by chance, they were hugging behind a tree. "Michael, I swear I didn't know," said Kevin, visibly uncomfortable. "I didn't even pay attention to these photos when I took them. I was on automatic mode, you know, clicking everything, everyone, so I wouldn't miss anything." "I know. It's not your fault." Michael took the camera from Kevin's hands and looked at those images again. There was the proof. There was the visual confirmation of what he had heard. He looked at his watch again. 20 minutes until the ceremony. "Kevin, I need to ask you one more thing." "Anything, man. Can you transfer these photos to my phone, the ones with Jessica and this guy?" Kevin didn't hesitate. He took a cable from his bag and connected the camera to Michael's phone, transferring the images in a matter of minutes. When he finished, Michael looked at the photos on his phone screen and felt a strange mix of pain and relief. Pain from the betrayal, relief for having found out before signing the papers officially. "What are you going to do now?" asked Kevin. Michael thought for a moment. He could confront Jessica in private. He could discreetly cancel the wedding. He could simply not show up at the ceremony. But all these options meant she would get off relatively unscathed, that she could tell her own version of the story, that she could paint him as the villain or the crazy one. No. If he was going to end it, it would be the right way, with the truth. "Do you have access to the chapel's sound system?" asked Michael. Kevin blinked, surprised by the question. "I do. I need to coordinate with the sound guys to know when to play the entrance music, that kind of thing." "Great. Then here's what we're going to do." Michael explained his plan, and Kevin listened with his eyes growing wider and wider. "Michael, are you sure about this? It's kind of extreme, don't you think?" "Extreme would be marrying someone who's using me and cheating on me. This is just justice." Michael's voice was firm, without hesitation. "Are you with me or not?" Kevin was silent for a few seconds, then nodded. "I'm with you, man. You don't deserve what she's doing." "Thank you." Michael shook Kevin's hand, and for the first time since he heard that conversation, he felt like he might be able to breathe properly again. After Kevin left, Michael was alone with his thoughts. He picked up his phone and opened the cloud storage app. There was a shared folder with Jessica, where they both kept special photos and messages from the relationship. She always said it was romantic, having a space just for them on the internet. Now Michael wondered if she had other shared folders, with other people, with other lies. He started searching, and it didn't take long to find something that shouldn't be there. There were audio messages, apparently sent by mistake to the shared folder, instead of going directly to the intended recipient. The first one had been sent 3 days ago, and Michael clicked on it with a racing heart. It was Jessica's voice, but speaking in a way he rarely heard. Soft, intimate, passionate. Love, I already miss you. These last few days before the wedding are so exhausting. I can't wait for this to be over, so we can see each other normally again. Michael is so excited about the honeymoon, it's almost pitiful. Little does he know that you and I have already planned our own trip for next month. I love you so much, Brandon. Kiss. Michael closed his eyes, feeling a physical pain in his chest. There were 4 more audio messages like that, all sent in the last 10 days. In one of them, Jessica complained about having to fake enthusiasm for the wedding preparations. In another, she laughed at something Michael had said, calling him naive. He saved all the messages in a separate folder, making sure he had copies. Then he looked in the mirror one more time. The man staring back at him was no longer the same as an hour ago. He still wore his impeccable black suit. His hair was still perfectly combed, but there was something different in his eyes. A hardness, a determination, a coldness that Michael never imagined he could feel. 15 minutes until the ceremony. A knock on the door startled him. It was his best man, David, his best friend since adolescence. "Dude, it's almost time. Are you ready?" David came in smiling, but the smile died when he saw Michael's expression. What happened? Michael hesitated. He wanted to tell Dave he wanted someone by his side who knew the truth before the bomb exploded, but he also knew that Dave would try to convince him not to do what he was about to do, that he would try to calm him down, make him think twice. "Nothing, just nervous," Michael lied, forcing a smile. "Man, it's normal. I was terrified at my wedding too. But look, Jessica loves you. You love her. You're going to be very happy." Dave put his hand on Michael's shoulder in a brotherly gesture. Those words should have been comforting, but they only made Michael feel angrier. Anger at Jessica for deceiving not only him, but everyone who believed in that relationship. "Let's go then," said Michael, straightening his tie one last time. They left the room and walked through the party venue's corridors. Michael could hear the soft music playing in the chapel. He could smell the flowers. He could sense the anticipation in the air. Everything was perfect, or at least it seemed perfect to those who didn't know what he knew. Kevin was near the chapel entrance, discreetly talking to the sound technician. When he saw Michael, he gave a quick nod. He was ready. Michael entered the chapel from the side and went to the altar. The place was beautiful, decorated with arrangements of white and lilac flowers, the colors Jessica had chosen. The chairs were all occupied, 350 familiar and unfamiliar faces watching him with kind smiles. His mother, Mrs. Barbara, was in the front row, wiping tears of emotion. Beside her, his father, Mr. Robert, nodded discreetly with pride in his eyes. On the other side, in the area reserved for the bride's family, was Mrs. Deborah, Jessica's mother, an elegant 63-year-old woman, always very concerned with appearances and what others thought. Next to her, Mr. Charles, Jessica's father, a serious man who worked as an accountant and had always been fair with Michael. Michael took his place at the altar next to the celebrant, a friendly man named Father Andrew, who had baptized Jessica when she was a baby and would now conduct her wedding. Or at least that's what the priest thought he would do. The music changed. It was the sign that the bride was about to enter. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, feel free to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The double doors of the chapel opened, and there she was. Jessica was stunning in her white wedding dress, her blonde hair half up and half down in soft curls, a bouquet of white roses in her hands. The bridesmaids came behind her, Jennifer in red and Samantha in yellow, both smiling radiantly. Jessica's father accompanied her by the arm, emotional. Michael watched her walk toward him, and for a brief moment he had doubts. She was so beautiful, so seemingly happy. Had he misheard? Was that conversation just a tasteless joke between friends? But then Jessica looked at him and Michael saw. He saw the falseness in her smile. He saw the calculation in her eyes. He saw the mask she wore so well, and his doubts evaporated. Jessica arrived at the altar, and Mr. Charles handed her hand to Michael, whispering, "Take good care of my daughter." Michael nodded without saying a word. Jessica stood beside him, and he could smell the expensive perfume she wore, could see every detail of the face he had kissed so many times, had woken up next to so many mornings. Father Andrew began the ceremony, speaking about love, about commitment, about the journey starting there. Michael listened as if he were far away, as if it were happening to someone else. Jessica squeezed his hand and smiled at the guests, perfectly playing the role of the passionate bride. The ceremony proceeded normally. There were biblical readings, a song sung by a friend of Jessica's, more words from the priest about the sanctity of marriage, and then came the moment for the vows. "Now," said Father Andrew, smiling at the couple, "the groom and bride would like to say a few words to each other. Michael, would you like to start?" Michael looked at Jessica. She smiled at him with those eyes he thought he knew so well, but he didn't. He never had. "Yes, Father." "I would," said Michael, his voice steady without trembling. He took the offered microphone and turned slightly to face both Jessica and the guests. He could see his mother smiling emotionally, could see Dave giving a thumbs up, could see the expectation on everyone's faces. "Jessica," Michael began, pausing to let the suspense build. "Today is a very important day, a day that will change our lives forever." She nodded, still smiling, with no idea of what was to come. "I remember the day I met you. You were wearing that blue dress. Your hair was different, shorter. I thought you were the most beautiful woman I had ever seen." Michael spoke slowly, his voice echoing through the silent chapel. "We started dating, and I thought I had found the person I would spend the rest of my life with, the person who loved me just as much as I loved her." Jessica kept smiling, but Michael noticed a slight change in her expression, a small tension around her eyes, as if she were trying to figure out where he was going with this. 3 years, Jessica. 3 years of relationship. 1,095 days, to be exact. Do you know how many times I doubted you in those 1,095 days? Michael paused dramatically. "None. Not once. Because I trusted you. Because I believed in you. Because I was naive enough to think the love I felt was returned." Jessica's smile began to waver. She reached for his microphone, but Michael moved slightly away. "Michael, what are you doing?" she whispered, trying to keep her voice low, but the microphone picked up the words. "I'm telling the truth, Jessica. For the first time in this relationship, someone is going to tell the truth." Michael turned to the guests, who were starting to shift uncomfortably in their seats, sensing something was wrong. "You all came here today to celebrate love, to see two people promise to spend their lives together. But before we make those promises, I think it's important that everyone knows exactly what kind of relationship we're celebrating." "Michael, please." Jessica tried again to take the microphone, but Jennifer and Samantha approached, also trying to understand what was happening. "This morning," Michael continued, ignoring the attempts to interrupt, "I overheard a very interesting conversation. A conversation between the bride and her bridesmaids." Jessica instantly paled. Her eyes widened, and she turned to Jennifer with an expression of pure panic. "In this conversation," Michael kept his voice steady, though he could feel his own hands trembling, "Jessica confessed something I think everyone here should know. She confessed that she never truly loved me, that she's marrying me for financial reasons, because I'm stable, because I can give her the comfortable life she wants." A murmur swept through the chapel like a wave. Mrs. Deborah rose from her seat, hand over her mouth, eyes fixed on her daughter. Mr. Charles remained seated, but Michael could see the confusion and the beginning of what seemed like anger on his face. "That's not true!" Jessica shouted, turning to the guests with tears in her eyes. She had always been good at crying when she needed to. "He's lying. I don't know why he's doing this, but he's lying." Am I lying? Michael asked, and there was a frightening calm in his voice. Then you didn't tell your friends that I'm naive. That it's almost funny how I believe everything you say. Jessica opened and closed her mouth, unable to form words. Jennifer tried to pull her back, but Samantha was frozen, looking at Michael with an expression of guilt and fear. And there's more, Michael continued, feeling a strange release in finally getting everything out. Jessica isn't just using me, she's cheating on me, with a man named Brandon. The murmur turned into open exclamations of shock. Michael's mother brought her hand to her chest, and Dave stood up from his chair at the side, mouth open in absolute shock. No, I'm not. Michael, I swear, you're mistaken. Jessica was screaming now, tears streaming down her face, staining her carefully applied makeup. Am I mistaken? Michael signaled to Kevin, who was near the sound system. Then let's clear this up once and for all. The screens that had been installed to project photos of the couple during the ceremony suddenly came to life. And there, for all to see, were the photos. Jessica and an unknown man holding hands in the garden, the two of them embracing. The man fixing her hair with intimacy. Images that left no doubt about the nature of that relationship. Jessica looked at the screens and let out a sound that was half scream, half sob. She turned to her father, as if seeking help, but Mr. Charles's face was red with anger and shame, unable to look at his daughter. These photos were taken this morning, Michael said, his voice echoing through the now absolutely silent chapel, all eyes fixed on him or the screens. Hours before our wedding ceremony, while I was preparing to become your husband, you were in the arms of another man. Michael, I can explain. Jessica tried to approach him, but Michael stepped back, keeping his distance. Explain what, Jessica? The photos, or the audio messages? The color drained completely from her face. What messages? Michael made another signal to Kevin, and this time it was the sound system that came to life. Jessica's voice, that soft, intimate voice he had heard on the phone, began to echo through the chapel. Love, I already miss you. These last days before the wedding are so exhausting. I can't wait for this to be over and for us to be able to see each other normally again. Jessica dropped her bouquet. The white flowers scattered across the floor as she covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. But there was no more denying it, no more lying. Her own voice condemned her before everyone. The message continued playing, each word like a knife in the heart of those who had believed in that love. When it reached the part where Jessica laughed at Michael, calling him naive, several people in the chapel let out indignant exclamations. Mrs. Deborah finally moved, climbing the steps to the altar with stiff steps. Is it true? She asked her daughter, her voice trembling with contained anger. Is all of this true? Jessica couldn't respond. She just cried, her whole body trembling, the white dress suddenly seeming like a cruel joke. Deborah, take her away, said Mr. Charles, who had stood up and approached. His face was red, the veins in his neck bulging. Take her away now, before I do something I'll regret. But Michael hadn't finished yet. There's one last thing, he said, and everyone turned their attention to him. While checking our shared accounts, I discovered something interesting. Jessica opened 3 credit cards in my name, without my authorization, over the last 6 months. He picked up a folder he had hidden under the altar and pulled out several printed papers. These are the statements. Adding it all up, she accumulated $72,000 in debt. Clothes shopping, dinners, a trip to the beach last month where she said she was visiting a friend in Denver. Michael looked at Jessica. I imagine it was with Brandon, right? Jessica slid to the floor, sitting on the altar steps, completely destroyed. Jennifer tried to approach her, but several guests stopped her, shouting that she had also been part of that whole lie. How did you find all this out? Asked Mrs. Deborah, her voice low, looking at Michael with a mixture of respect and horror. By chance, Michael replied simply. I overheard a conversation I shouldn't have, and after hearing it, I couldn't just let it go. I couldn't marry someone who sees me as a fool to be used. The silence in the chapel was absolute. 350 people were witnessing the collapse of a marriage before it had even officially begun. Father Andrew, who had been paralyzed during the whole scene, finally found his voice. My son, I'm sorry for what you're going through, but perhaps we should resolve this more privately. No, Father, Michael interrupted, but respectfully. This needed to be public because she planned for our wedding to be public. She planned to make me look like an idiot in front of all of you, my friends, my family. So it was fair that the truth be public too. Mr. Charles helped his wife lift their daughter from the floor. Jessica could barely stand, her whole body limp, her face destroyed. "Let's go," he said, his voice hard. "Now." But before they could leave, Michael spoke once more. "Wait," he approached Jessica, who raised her swollen eyes to him. "You said I was naive, that I was easy to fool. Maybe you were right, Jessica. I was naive to trust you. But know this, you didn't fool me because I was stupid. You fooled me because I truly loved you. And when we truly love, we trust. The flaw wasn't mine. It was yours." Jessica tried to speak, but only a sob came out. Her parents dragged her down the central aisle of the chapel, past guests who looked on with expressions ranging from pity to disapproval. Jennifer and Samantha followed them, keeping their heads down, avoiding glances. When they left, the silence continued for a few more seconds. Then Dave went up to the altar and hugged Michael tightly. "Man, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "I know, Dave. No one did." Michael returned the hug, and it was only there, in his friend's arms, that he allowed his own mask to slip a little. He was exhausted emotionally and physically. Mrs. Barbara went up to the altar too, tears streaming down her face. She took Michael's face in her hands and looked him in the eyes. "My son, you were very brave, and I know you're suffering, but know that none of this is your fault. Do you hear me? None of it." Michael nodded, not trusting his own voice at the moment. Father Andrew cleared his throat. "Well, I suppose there won't be a ceremony today, but—" "Michael, do you want to say something to everyone here?" Michael turned to the guests. He saw familiar faces, people who had traveled for hours to be there, who had bought gifts, who had dressed formally to celebrate what they thought would be a happy day. "I want to thank everyone for coming," he said, and his voice was tired but firm. "I know you expected to see a wedding, and I'm truly sorry for wasting your time, but I simply couldn't go through with it. I couldn't live a lie. I couldn't pretend I didn't know what she had done." He paused, looking around. "The buffet is paid for, the drinks too. So, if you want to stay and enjoy the food and music, please do. Consider this a celebration of honesty, of truth, of not settling for less than we deserve." There was a moment of hesitation, and then someone started clapping. It was an older lady, a friend of his mother. Others joined in, and soon half the chapel was applauding. It wasn't celebratory applause, but one of support, of solidarity. Michael stepped down from the altar on shaky legs. Dave was holding his arm, making sure he didn't fall. His mother came from the other side, his father right behind. They left the chapel together, leaving behind what should have been the happiest day of Michael's life, but had turned into the most painful and, strangely, also liberating day. Outside, the sun was shining brightly. It was a beautiful September day in Aspen, the sky blue and cloudless, the temperature pleasant. Michael stopped for a moment, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath. The air had never felt so clean. "What do you want to do now?" asked Dave, still by his side. Michael opened his eyes and looked at his friend. "I don't know, but at least now I'll do what I want, not what someone is manipulating me to do." They went back to the hall where Michael had gotten ready. Inside, Michael took off his jacket and loosened his bow tie, suddenly feeling claustrophobic in the formal attire. "Man, how did you manage to do that?" asked Dave, sitting in a chair and looking at Michael with something that seemed like admiration. "I would have fainted or run away or... I don't know. I wouldn't have been able to stand there and expose everything like that." "I don't know either," admitted Michael. "It was like someone else took over, a part of me I didn't know that never needed to come out before." Kevin appeared at the door, knocking lightly before entering. "Michael, just wanted to know if you're okay, and, man, you were amazing out there. I know it's a horrible situation, but you handled it the right way. Thank you, Kevin, and thank you for helping me. Without you, I wouldn't have managed." "Any time. And look, About the payment for the photos. Forget it, okay? No way I'm charging anything after what happened. Michael was about to protest, but Kevin raised his hand. No arguments. Consider it my gift of liberation, I guess. You deserve it. After Kevin left, Michael was alone with Dave for a few minutes. Neither spoke, just absorbing what had happened. Then came the questions Michael knew were coming. "Do you still love her?" Dave asked softly. Michael thought for a long moment before answering, "I don't know. I think I love the person I thought she was. But that person never existed, did she? So how can I love a lie?" "That's a good question." "What hurts more," Michael continued, more to himself than to Dave, "isn't just the betrayal. It's knowing that for 3 years, every kiss, every I love you, every promise, none of it meant to her what it meant to me. While I was planning our future together, she was planning how to use me." "Are you going to report her? For the credit card fraud?" Michael sighed. "Honestly, I don't know. Part of me wants justice, wants to see her pay for what she did. But another part just wants to forget she exists and move on. You have a few days to decide. You don't need to solve everything right now." Michael nodded, grateful for his friend's sensitivity. Knocks on the door interrupted them. It was Robert, Michael's father. "Son, may I come in?" "Of course, Dad." Robert entered, closing the door behind him. He was a tall man with broad shoulders who had worked his whole life as a civil engineer. He had taught Michael to be honest, hard-working, and loyal. And now he saw his son dealing with the consequence of having been exactly those things. "Michael, I don't know what to say," Robert began, his voice choked, "except that I'm proud of you." Michael looked at his father, surprised. "Proud?" "Yes. You could have just run away. You could have hidden the truth. You could have let that woman keep deceiving you. But you faced the situation head-on. It was hard to watch, but it was the right thing to do." "It doesn't feel like the right thing, Dad. It feels like I just blew my whole life to pieces." Robert sat beside his son and put a hand on his shoulder. "Sometimes, son, we need to destroy to rebuild better. Your life with that woman would have been a lie, painful, empty, destroying you bit by bit. You saved yourself from years of suffering. It doesn't feel that way now." "I know, but it will. With time, it will." The three of them stayed there for a few more minutes, in supportive silence. Then Barbara entered, bringing a glass of water for Michael. "Son, you need to drink something and eat. When was the last time you ate?" Michael tried to remember and couldn't. "This morning, I think, before hearing the conversation." "Then come, let's go to the party hall. At least we'll enjoy the food that's paid for." Michael hesitated. The idea of going back there, seeing the guests, having to talk about what happened with every person who approached. "I don't know if I can, Mom." "You can," she said firmly. "You managed to do the hardest part. Now you just need to hold your head up and move forward, and we'll be by your side the whole time." Reluctantly, Michael agreed. He changed from his formal suit into more comfortable clothes he had brought for after the ceremony, and the group left the hall heading toward the party space. The place was surprisingly full. Michael expected most people to have left, but apparently many had decided to stay. Music was playing, the buffet was being served, and there were even some people dancing. It was the strangest wedding reception Michael had ever seen. As soon as he entered, people started approaching. Some came just to shake his hand in silent solidarity. Others wanted to talk, express support, share their own stories of betrayals and romantic disappointments. Some had questions, wanted to know details, understand better what had happened. Michael answered what he could, trying to be polite, but feeling increasingly exhausted with each interaction. It was then that he saw Mr. Charles approaching. Jessica's father was alone, without his wife or daughter. He had a serious, almost grim expression on his face. Michael prepared for a confrontation, but what happened surprised him. "Michael," Mr. Charles began, stopping a few steps away. "I came to apologize to you." Michael blinked, confused. "Apologize for what?" "For my daughter. For what she did to you." I didn't know. You have to believe me. I had no idea what she was doing, but still, I feel it's my responsibility." I failed to raise her right to teach her values that matter. Mr. Charles, with all due respect, Jessica is an adult. Her choices are her own, not yours. I know, but... The older man ran his hand over his face, seeming to have aged years that day. I raised her alone with Deborah after some difficulties when she was little. I always gave her everything she asked for, always tried to make up for things from the past. I think I spoiled her too much, didn't teach her about consequences, about responsibility. Michael didn't know what to say. He saw genuine pain on Charles's face, a deep shame. About the credit cards, Charles continued. I'll pay off this debt, all of it. It's not fair that you're stuck with it because of my daughter's mistakes. Mr. Charles, that's not necessary. Yes, it is, the man interrupted firmly. It's the only right thing to do. I'll transfer the money to you by the end of the week. And about suing her for fraud, I'd understand if you wanted to do that. I won't try to talk you out of it. Michael looked at that broken man before him and felt something different from anger or bitterness. He felt pity. I'll think about it, he said finally. But I appreciate the offer to pay the debt. That helps. Charles nodded, seeming relieved. And Michael, one last thing. You're a good man, an honest and brave man. My daughter didn't deserve you. I hope you find someone who does, someone who sees your worth. With those words, Charles turned and left the hall, leaving Michael processing that unexpected conversation. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out now continuing. The party went on for a few more hours. Michael ended up relaxing a bit, talking with old friends, accepting hugs from relatives, even allowing himself to laugh at some jokes Dave was making to lighten the mood. It wasn't happiness. It was nothing close to that. But it also wasn't the despair he had felt earlier. When the party finally ended, and the last guests had left, Michael returned to his parents' house where he had grown up. The thought of going back to the apartment he shared with Jessica was unthinkable at that moment. Barbara made tea and the three of them sat in the familiar kitchen at the old wooden table where Michael had done his homework as a child, where he had eaten countless meals, where he had shared victories and defeats over the years. What are you going to do now, son? Barbara asked softly. I need to go to the apartment to get my things, said Michael. But not today. I don't have the strength for it today. Do you want me to go with you? Robert offered. Or Dave or someone? Maybe, I'll see. Michael stirred his tea without really drinking it. And I need to sort out the credit card situation. See a lawyer about my rights, about how to cancel those debts if possible. Your cousin Andrew is a lawyer, remember? Suggested Barbara. He can help you, and I know he'll do what he can. Michael nodded. He remembered Andrew, a few years older, always helpful. And Jessica? Asked Robert. Do you think she'll try to get in touch? As if in response, Michael's phone vibrated. It was a message from an unknown number. He opened it and read, Michael, it's Jessica. I blocked my old number. Please give me a chance to explain. I messed up. I know I messed up. But can we talk? Just the two of us. I love you. I've always loved you. All that was a terrible misunderstanding. Michael showed the message to his parents. She doesn't give up easily, does she? Commented Robert bitterly. Are you going to reply? Asked Barbara. Michael thought for a moment, then typed a short response. There's nothing to explain, Jessica. I heard everything, saw everything. I don't want any more contact. Please respect that. He blocked the new number and set the phone aside. There, it's over. But it wasn't over, and Michael knew it. He would have to deal with the consequences of that day for weeks, months maybe. He would have to divide assets, cancel joint accounts, explain to co-workers, deal with the social scene of a small town where everyone would talk about what happened. But in that moment, sitting in his parents' kitchen, drinking tea that tasted like childhood, Michael allowed himself to just be. He didn't think about tomorrow. He didn't think about the following week. He just existed in that moment of silence and safety. The following days were a fog of practical tasks and emotional pain. Michael took a week off from work, something his boss understood immediately when he learned what had happened. The story had spread quickly through Aspen, and Michael found himself being stopped on the street by acquaintances who wanted to express sympathy, or worse, by the curious who wanted sordid details. Dave helped him go to the apartment and collect his things. Jessica wasn't there. Apparently she had gone to her parents' house. The place was exactly as Michael had left it on the morning of the wedding, with remnants of the preparations still scattered around. There was a to-do list on the refrigerator, written in Jessica's handwriting, with items like confirm honeymoon and transfer money that now seemed like a cruel joke. Michael gathered his clothes, his books, some personal items. He left behind everything he had bought for them as a couple, all the photos together, all the dating gifts. He wanted a clean break. He wanted to leave without carrying anything that would remind him of her. He found, hidden in the back of her closet, a second cell phone that Michael had never seen before. When he managed to unlock it, he found hundreds of messages between Jessica and Brandon. Messages dating back almost a year. A year. She had started cheating on him a year before the wedding. Michael read some of the messages, even though he knew he was torturing himself. He saw plans being made, double lives being coordinated, lies being carefully constructed. He saw Jessica complaining about him to her lover, saying how boring it was to pretend interest in their conversations, how she had to force kisses and intimacy. Each word was a stab, but it was also a confirmation. It hadn't been Michael's fault. It hadn't been anything he had done or failed to do. Jessica simply was who she was, a person capable of using and manipulating without remorse. "Dude, you should stop reading that," said Dave, noticing Michael's pale face. "It's only going to hurt you." "I know, but I need to see. I need to fully understand what I escaped." On the phone, he also found conversations between Jessica and Jennifer, planning how they would spend Michael's money, how they would convince him to invest in non-existent businesses, how they would manipulate him to do what they wanted. There was a calculated coldness in those messages that made Michael feel cold to the bone. He took pictures of all the most incriminating conversations before turning off the phone. They might be useful if he needed additional evidence for any legal matters. 2 weeks after the day that should have been his wedding, Michael was in his cousin Andrew's office, a lawyer specializing in civil law. "Well, the good news is that you have more than enough evidence of fraud," said Andrew, flipping through the documents Michael had brought. "She opened credit in your name. That's a crime. You can sue her criminally and civilly." "And the bad news?" "The bad news is that even if you win the lawsuits, the chance of recovering all the money is small. You know how much she earns as a freelancer, right? It's irregular, often barely enough for her to support herself. She probably doesn't have assets to cover all this debt." Michael sighed. Her father offered to pay. That would be ideal, because then you solve the financial problem without having to go through a lawsuit that will last years and make you relive all this constantly. But she gets off scot-free? She can do this to someone else? Andrew set the papers down on the desk and looked seriously at Michael. "Look, as your cousin, I'm going to give you some advice that I probably shouldn't as a lawyer. You can sue her. You can make her face criminal charges for what she did. But that will mean months, maybe years of hearings, having to see her, having to relive all of this. It will consume your energy, your time, your peace of mind. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't to sue, it's simply to leave it behind and build a better life without that person." "But is it fair?" insisted Michael. "No, it's not fair, but life rarely is, cousin. The question is, do you want legal justice or personal peace? Because you'll hardly get both at the same time in this case." Michael fell silent, thinking. Part of him wanted to see Jessica pay, wanted there to be real and severe consequences for what she had done. But another part, the part that was tired, hurt, just wanted to move on and forget she existed. "I'll think about it," he said finally. "Take your time. And Michael, whatever you decide, I'm here to help you, okay?" Michael thanked him and left the office with more questions than answers. That night, sitting alone in the guest room at his parents' house, Michael opened his laptop and started looking for apartments to rent. He couldn't stay at his parents' house forever, no matter how much they insisted he could stay as long as he needed. He needed his own space. He needed to rebuild his life independently. He found a small apartment, just one bedroom, in a quieter part of Aspen. It was simple, but it had a balcony with a view of the mountains, and something about it appealed to Michael. He scheduled a viewing for the next day. The phone rang. It was a number he recognized as Jessica's mother, Mrs. Deborah. Michael hesitated but ended up answering. "Hello? Michael, it's Deborah. Can you talk?" "Yes." There was a pause on the other end, and Michael could almost feel the woman's discomfort. "I just wanted to thank you, actually." "Thank me?" Michael hadn't expected that. "For exposing my daughter. I know it sounds strange, but I needed to see who she really was. I raised that girl, sacrificed so much for her, and to find out she's capable of doing that to someone who loved her. It was devastating but necessary. Mrs. Deborah, with all due respect, I don't know what you want me to say." "You don't need to say anything. I just wanted you to know that I'm on your side in this. Charles will pay the debts as promised, and I'm making my daughter seek therapy to see if we can understand where this lack of character comes from." Michael fell silent, processing that. "And Brandon? Is she still seeing him?" Deborah let out a bitter sound, half laugh, half sigh. "No. As soon as things got complicated, he disappeared. Blocked her on everything. Doesn't want any more contact. Apparently he was married too, was cheating on his own wife. Two liars who found each other and are now alone as they deserve." "I'm sorry you're going through this," said Michael, and it was true. As furious as he was with Jessica, he didn't wish suffering on her parents, who seemed like decent people caught in a terrible situation. "Thank you, Michael, and again I'm sorry for everything." After Deborah hung up, Michael stared at the phone. Life was strange. He had thought the wedding day would be the start of something wonderful, and instead, it had been the painful end of a 3-year lie. But maybe, he thought, sometimes endings were actually beginnings in disguise. A month had passed since the day that should have been the wedding. Michael had moved into the new apartment, a space that was entirely his, with no shared memories, no ghosts of fake relationships. He went back to work and threw himself into it with renewed dedication. His colleagues were supportive, never pushing him to talk about the matter but making it clear they were there if he needed them. Michael focused on new projects, on challenges that demanded his full attention, and discovered that working helped him not to think so much. The nights were harder. That's when the loneliness weighed heaviest, when he caught himself thinking about what he could have done differently, even though he rationally knew it wasn't his fault. He talked a few times with Dave, who was always available to have a beer and talk about football, work, anything but Jessica. It was on one of those nights, wandering aimlessly through the streets of Aspen, that Michael ended up stopping in front of an animal shelter that he passed almost every day on his way to work, but had never really noticed. A sign on the door said, "Volunteers always welcome," and on impulse Michael went in. A woman in her 50s was at the reception desk organizing papers. "Good evening. Can I help you?" she asked with a warm smile. "I was thinking about volunteering, if you still need people." "We always do," she stood up, extending her hand. "My name is Linda. I'm the coordinator here." Michael spent the next hour talking with Linda, getting to know the shelter, interacting with the animals. There were everything from playful puppies to older dogs that seemed to have lost hope of finding a home. One in particular caught Michael's attention. It was a medium-sized mixed breed with brown and white fur, lying in a corner of the kennel, watching everything with sad but attentive eyes. The plaque on his cage said, "Buddy, 4 years old, found abandoned." "That's Buddy," said Linda, noticing Michael's interest. "He's been here for 6 months. He's a sweet dog, obedient, calm, but people always choose the puppies. No one wants an adult dog." Michael crouched in front of the cage, and Buddy slowly approached, sniffing the outstretched hand. Their eyes met, and there was something there, a mutual recognition of souls that had been hurt and abandoned. "Can I open the cage?" asked Michael. Linda smiled. "Of course." As soon as the door opened, Buddy calmly came out and sat beside Michael, leaning his body against him as if to say, "You understand me, don't you?" Michael ran his hand over the dog's fur, feeling the animal's warmth, the solidity of his presence, and something inside him unlocked. Tears began to stream down his face, the first real tears he had shed since the day of the wedding. They weren't tears of anger or shame, but of relief. Relief at feeling a genuine connection with another living being, even if that being was an abandoned dog. "I think you found your companion," Linda said softly, watching the interaction. "I think so," Michael agreed, his voice choked up. 3 days later, Michael returned to the shelter to officially pick up Buddy. He had bought a bed, food bowls, toys, everything a dog could need. Linda helped him with the paperwork, and when Michael left there with Buddy on a leash, he felt he was finally beginning to rebuild his life in a concrete way. Buddy adapted to the apartment as if he had always lived there. He was calm, well-behaved, and seemed to instinctively understand when Michael needed quiet companionship versus when he needed distractions and play. Michael established a routine of walking with Buddy every morning and every afternoon. The walks were therapeutic. They gave structure to his days, forced him to leave the house even on the days he just wanted to isolate himself. It was during one of these morning walks, about 2 months after the day of the cancelled wedding, that Michael encountered something unexpected that would make him question his decision not to sue Jessica. He was in the Central Park of Aspen, Buddy happily sniffing the trees, when Michael recognized a couple sitting on a nearby bench. It was a co-worker, Steve, with his girlfriend. Michael was about to greet them when he overheard their conversation. "Honey, I swear it'll work this time," said the girlfriend, a woman Michael vaguely recognized from company parties. "You just need to trust me with the cards." Something in her tone, the manipulative way she spoke with false innocence, made Michael stop. He watched from a distance as she practically begged Steve to let her use his credit cards just for a few months. And then Michael saw it. Really saw it. Sitting on another bench, a bit farther away but clearly watching that couple, was Jessica. Michael's heart raced. What was she doing there? And why was she watching Steve and his girlfriend so intently? Michael approached discreetly, hiding behind some trees, Buddy quiet at his side, as if understanding the need for caution. Jessica was on her phone, apparently sending messages. Michael saw when Steve's girlfriend glanced discreetly at her own phone, read something, and then continued talking to Steve, using arguments that seemed rehearsed. With a chill down his spine, Michael understood what was happening. Jessica was coaching that woman, helping her manipulate Steve exactly as she had manipulated Michael. He took out his own phone and started discreetly recording. He filmed Jessica looking at her phone, filmed Steve's girlfriend doing the same right after, filmed the pattern repeating several times. After about 20 minutes, the couple got up and left, and Jessica also left, taking a different path. Michael stayed there, processing what he had just witnessed. He scheduled a meeting with Steve after work that day. They met at a quiet bar downtown. "Hey, Michael. It's been a while since we talked properly," said Steve, ordering a beer. "How are you, man? I heard about what happened at the wedding. What a situation." "That's what I wanted to talk about." Michael took a deep breath. "Steve, this might sound strange, but do you trust your girlfriend?" Steve blinked, surprised by the question. "Nicole, of course, why?" Michael took out his phone and showed the video he had recorded that morning. "Because I think she might be deceiving you, just like Jessica deceived me." Steve watched the video with growing concern. "What is this? Are they coordinating?" "It seems so. You said Nicole asked to use your credit cards." "Yes, but she's having temporary financial difficulties. It's not—" Steve stopped, realization dawning on him. "Wait, you think it's the same thing Jessica did to you?" "I'm not sure, but it's too suspicious to ignore. Steve, I don't want to be the guy who creates paranoia, but after what I went through, I can't just stay quiet when I see something like this." Steve fell silent, staring at his beer without drinking. "Nicole is friends with Jessica," he said finally. "They've known each other for years." Michael felt his stomach sink. "Steve, I think you should investigate. Check her messages, verify her bank accounts, make sure everything's correct." "But that would be invading her privacy. And her using your cards without your real knowledge would be what?" "Look, I'm not saying she's definitely doing something wrong." But she's asking you to trust someone who apparently takes instructions from someone I know, with absolute certainty, is capable of fraud and manipulation. Steve rubbed his face, clearly conflicted. I'll think about it. I'll pay more attention. Thanks for warning me, Michael. You're welcome. And Steve, if you need help, you know where to find me. When he got home that night, Michael couldn't stop thinking. Was Jessica really teaching other people to do what she had done? Were there more victims? He grabbed his phone and called Andrew. "Cuz, I changed my mind. I want to sue Jessica." There was a pause on the other end. "Are you sure? I thought you had decided to let it go." "I was letting it go, but today I found out she might be helping other people do the same thing. I can't stay silent if she's multiplying this." "I get it. Then let's do this right. Come over tomorrow. We'll prepare everything." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The lawsuit against Jessica was filed a week later. Andrew prepared it meticulously, including all the evidence Michael had collected, all the fraud documents, all the compromising conversations. Jessica's reaction was immediate. She tried to contact Michael repeatedly, leaving tearful messages, then angry ones, then desperate ones. Michael didn't respond to any. Mr. Charles called, not to ask Michael to drop the case, but to inform him that he would keep his promise to pay the debts regardless of the lawsuit. "You're doing the right thing," said Charles. "My daughter needs to face the consequences of her actions. It's the only way she might learn something." 3 weeks after the lawsuit was filed, Michael received a phone call from Steve. "Michael, man, you were right. About Nicole?" "Yes. After our talk, I started paying more attention. I took her phone when she was sleeping and saw everything. Messages with Jessica, with other women too, all planning how to get money from their boyfriends. There was even a group called Successful Gold Diggers where they shared tactics." Michael closed his eyes, feeling nauseous. "Steve, I'm so sorry." "Don't be. You saved me from going through what you went through. I broke up with her yesterday. And what's more, I made copies of all the messages. I thought you and your lawyer might want to see them." "We definitely do. Thank you, Steve." With the new evidence provided by Steve, the case against Jessica became even stronger. Andrew discovered it wasn't just financial manipulation. Jessica was effectively running a network of women who used similar techniques to exploit romantic partners. The story began leaking to the local media. Newspapers in Aspen and the region published articles about heartbreak scams, interviewing Michael and other men who had been victims. Jessica became locally known, and not in a positive way. 4 months after the cancelled wedding day, Michael was sitting in the courtroom waiting for the judge to enter. It was the first official hearing of the lawsuit. Jessica was across the room with her lawyer, visibly thinner, with deep, dark circles under her eyes. She tried to make eye contact with Michael several times, but he kept his gaze fixed forward. The judge entered, everyone stood up, and the hearing began. Andrew presented the case with precision, showing each piece of evidence, each document, each message. Jessica's lawyer tried to argue that it had been an error in judgment, that she was remorseful, that she had psychological problems that led her to act that way. But when the judge saw the evidence of the larger scheme, the manipulation network that Jessica coordinated, his expression became serious. "Ms. Jessica Wilson," he said, "what's being presented here goes far beyond an error in judgment. This is a criminal pattern of behavior, an organized scheme to defraud and emotionally manipulate people. I will order that the case be investigated further and that all those involved be identified and prosecuted." Jessica started crying, but they were tears of despair, not regret. Michael watched everything with a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. There was no real pleasure in seeing someone he once loved being destroyed like that, but there was a sense of justice, that the right thing was being done. At the end of the hearing, Mr. Charles approached Michael outside the room. "Thank you," the man said simply. "For what?" "For not giving up, for making my daughter face the truth. I tried for months to get her to acknowledge what she had done, to seek help, to change. But she only saw herself as a victim, as if you had been cruel in exposing her. Maybe now, with real consequences, she'll finally understand. Michael nodded, not knowing what else to say. Life went on. The lawsuit progressed slowly, as lawsuits tend to do. But Michael was no longer waiting for it to move forward. He had already moved on. His apartment had become a real home. The walls that were once bare now had pictures he had chosen himself. The balcony had plants that he watered religiously, discovering an unexpected pleasure in taking care of something alive and watching it grow. Buddy was his constant companion, always by his side, always loyal. At work, Michael had been promoted. His boss had noticed how dedicated he was, and when a regional management position opened up, he offered it to Michael without hesitation. "You deserve this," said the boss. "Not only for the excellent work you do, but for the integrity you show. That's rare these days." Michael accepted the promotion, which came with a better salary and more responsibilities. More importantly, it came with a sense of achievement that was genuinely his, not based on impressing someone or building a life for two people. On weekends, he continued volunteering at the animal shelter. Linda had become a friend, a wise woman who had lived a lot and didn't judge, just listened and offered perspectives when needed. It was Linda who planted the first seed about Michael maybe starting to meet people again. "I'm not talking about serious dating," she said one Saturday afternoon while they were cleaning the kennels. "But you're young, Michael. Don't let one bad experience with a horrible person stop you from meeting others." "I don't know if I'm ready," Michael admitted. "No one ever is completely ready. And it doesn't have to be forced, but maybe just open yourself to the possibility. Go to new places, do different things. Don't close yourself off because of what happened." Michael thought a lot about those words. Was he closing himself off? He had dedicated himself so much to work and Buddy and rebuilding his life alone that he had forgotten that human connections were important too. He started slowly. He accepted invitations from co-workers for happy hours after work. He started playing soccer with friends on Sundays again, something he had stopped doing during his relationship with Jessica, because she always complained that he spent too much time away from her. In one of those soccer games, he met Jason, a new guy in town who had moved from Denver to work at a hotel. They hit it off immediately, discovering common interests in movies, books, and cooking. "Dude, there's a book club that meets at a bookstore here downtown," Jason said one day after the game. "I've always wanted to join, but it's boring to go alone. Want to go together?" Michael hesitated. A book club seemed way outside his comfort zone, but he remembered Linda's words about opening himself to new things. "Why not? Let's give it a try." The book club met every Thursday night. There were about 15 regulars, mostly women of various ages. The bookstore owner, Mrs. Elizabeth, a lively 70-year-old woman, led the discussions with enthusiasm and insight. Michael found that he enjoyed those meetings. He enjoyed hearing different interpretations of the books, being challenged to think about things he'd never considered, having intelligent conversations without hidden agendas. It was there that he met Emily. She was a literature teacher at a local school, 32 years old, with short black hair and round glasses that gave her an intellectual air. The first time Michael really noticed Emily was during a particularly lively discussion about a Mark Twain book. But it's precisely the moral ambiguity of the character that makes the story interesting, argued Emily, passion in her voice. If everything were black and white, obvious and predictable, we wouldn't be here discussing the book over 100 years later. Michael had agreed, adding his own points, and Emily had smiled at him, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. After that meeting, they talked briefly at the bookstore's entrance. "You're Michael, right?" she said. "I think you've been coming for about 3 weeks." "That's right. And you're Emily. You always participate in the discussions. It's clear you really love literature." "I'm a teacher. It kind of comes with the territory," she laughed. "But yes, I've always loved reading since I was a child." They talked for a few more minutes about favorite books, about how Emily had moved to Aspen 2 years ago to escape the chaos of Chicago. It was a light conversation. No pressure, just two people with common interests exchanging ideas. When Michael returned home that night, he caught himself thinking about Emily. Not in a romantic way, Not exactly, but with genuine interest. She seemed interesting, smart, passionate about what she did. He wanted to get to know her better as a person, as a friend perhaps. In the following weeks, Michael and Emily started talking more at the club meetings. They discovered they lived relatively close to each other, that they shopped at the same market, that they had friends in common without ever having met before. It was Jason who suggested, after one of the soccer games, "Dude, you should ask Emily out." Michael looked at his friend, surprised. "What? No, it's nothing like that." "It's not?" "Michael, you talk about her all the time. Emily said this. Emily recommended that book. Emily thinks that. It's obvious you're interested." "I'm interested in being her friend." "That's different." "Is it? Or are you afraid to try something more because of what happened with Jessica?" Michael fell silent. Was that it? Was he sabotaging himself before even giving any possibility a chance? "Look," continued Jason, seeing Michael's hesitation, "you don't have to ask her to marry you, just invite her for coffee or lunch. See where things go. No pressure, no huge expectations. Just give it a chance." Michael thought a lot about that. Was he ready to take a risk again, even if it was just for a closer friendship? At the next book club meeting, after everyone had left, Michael found courage. "Emily, do you have plans for next Saturday?" She was putting her book in her bag and looked at him with surprise. "Saturday? I don't have anything set yet. Why?" "There's a new coffee shop that opened near the park. I thought I'd check it out, try the pastries they say are excellent. I wondered if you'd like to come along. We could talk more about books or about anything else." Emily smiled, and Michael noticed a slight blush on her cheeks. "I'd love to. What time?" "How about 3 in the afternoon? That way we still have time to walk in the park if the weather's nice." "Perfect." When Michael left the bookstore that night, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't the uncontrolled euphoria he'd felt at the beginning of his relationship with Jessica, that feeling of being head over heels in love that he now realized had been more illusion than reality. It was something quieter, more solid. It was hope. Saturday arrived with perfect weather. Autumn in Aspen had that special quality, with the air crisp but not too cold, the trees starting to change color, the sky clear blue. Michael arrived at the coffee shop 5 minutes early, nervous in a way he hadn't expected to be. Buddy was at home, but he had almost brought the dog as a sort of emotional shield. He decided against it, knowing that would be cowardly. Emily arrived promptly at 3, wearing a simple moss-green dress that matched the autumn weather. They greeted each other with a brief hug and entered the coffee shop. The place was cozy, with wooden tables, plants on the walls, natural light coming in through the large windows. They ordered coffee and pies, choosing a table near the window. "So," said Emily after their orders arrived, "tell me more about yourself. I know you work in tech and that you read, but that's it." Michael hesitated. Should he tell her about Jessica, about the wedding that didn't happen, about everything he had been through? He decided on honesty. "Well, I think you should know something about me before we invest time in getting to know each other better." Emily watched him attentively, her coffee cup paused halfway to her mouth. 6 months ago, I was supposed to get married," Michael began. "But I found out, literally hours before the ceremony, that my fiancé was cheating on me and using me financially. I cancelled the wedding, exposed everything publicly, and now I'm suing her." He expected to see shock on Emily's face, perhaps fear, perhaps the decision to get up and leave. Instead, she set her cup down on the table and said, "Wow, that must have been awful." "It was. It still is, sometimes. And that's why you're telling me now. So I know you're hurt, busy with emotional baggage." "More or less, I want to be honest. I don't know if I'm looking for romance, Emily. Honestly, I don't know if I'm ready for it, but I enjoy talking with you. I enjoy your company. And I thought it was fair for you to know my situation before deciding if you want to keep getting to know me." Emily was silent for a moment, thoughtful. "I appreciate the honesty," she said finally. "And to be equally honest, I don't know if I'm looking for romance either. I moved to Aspen to start over after a relationship that left me questioning a lot about myself. My ex wasn't a bad person, But we were completely wrong for each other, and it took years for both of us to admit it. Michael felt relieved. He wasn't alone in his hesitation, in his fear. So maybe, continued Emily with a small smile, we can just be friends, get to know each other without expectations or pressures, and if something more eventually comes of it, great. If not, also great. We can just enjoy each other's company. That sounds perfect, agreed Michael, feeling the knot of nervousness in his stomach finally loosen. And so they spent the rest of the afternoon talking. About books, yes, but also about childhood, about dreams they had when they were younger, about how life rarely turns out as planned. Emily talked about her passion for teaching, about the challenges of working with teenagers, about how every class was different and special in its own way. Michael talked about his work, about Buddy, about volunteering at the animal shelter. He didn't talk more about Jessica, and Emily didn't ask. When they left the coffee shop, it was almost 6 in the evening. They walked through the park as Michael had suggested, watching families playing, elderly couples sitting on benches, children running after kites. "This was good," said Emily, when they finally said goodbye. "We can do this again. I'd like that very much." They started to see each other regularly, once a week, sometimes twice. They went to different coffee shops, to the movies, for walks around the outskirts of Aspen. They met each other's dogs. Emily had a mixed breed named Daisy, who got along surprisingly well with Buddy. There was no pressure, no expectations, just two people enjoying each other's company, building something genuine brick by brick. 6 months after meeting Emily, Michael was sitting on his porch, Buddy lying at his feet looking at the mountains in the distance. He thought about how his life had changed in a year. 1 year ago, he was planning a wedding, thinking he knew exactly what his future would look like. He was blind, manipulated, living in a reality built on lies. Now he was technically alone, but didn't feel lonely. He had true friends, a loyal dog, an apartment that was truly his, a job that satisfied him. And he had Emily, not as a girlfriend yet, maybe never as a girlfriend, but as someone who truly saw him, who accepted him with his wounds and hesitations. The lawsuit against Jessica had finally ended. She had been found guilty of fraud, had received community service and 5 years of probation. The judge had been severe, making it clear that he only didn't apply a prison sentence because it was Jessica's first official offense, but that any recurrence would be treated with extreme severity. The other women involved in the scheme had also been prosecuted and punished. The network had been dismantled, and several men had been saved from going through what Michael had gone through. Mr. Charles had kept his promise and paid all the debts. At their last meeting, the man had hugged Michael and thanked him again for not giving up on the lawsuit. "My daughter is in therapy now," said Charles. "She's finally accepted that she has real problems. It's going to be a long process, but at least she's trying. I don't know if she'll really change, but it's a start." Michael had sincerely wished that Jessica would succeed, not for him, but for herself. It was a terrible pain to live being the person she had been. His phone rang, pulling Michael out of his thoughts. It was Emily. "Hey, I finished my last class early. I was thinking of making dinner tonight. Want to come? I can try that lasagna recipe Mrs. Elizabeth gave me." Michael smiled and replied, "I'd love to. What time? 8 good? Perfect. Should I bring wine? Could be. See you soon." Michael put away his phone and looked at Buddy, who had woken up and was watching him with those loyal eyes. "What do you think, Buddy? We're going to Emily's for dinner tonight." Buddy wagged his tail as if completely approving. Michael got up and went into the apartment. He took a shower, chose comfortable clothes, grabbed a bottle of wine he had bought the previous week. Before leaving, he looked at himself in the mirror. The man staring back was different from the one who had been there a year ago. There were scars, yes, invisible but present. But there was also strength. There was also dignity. There was also the certainty that he could survive, that he could rebuild himself, that he deserved honesty and respect. He left the apartment with Buddy, deciding to walk to Emily's house instead of driving. It was a beautiful night, and he wanted to enjoy it. Along the way, he passed by the event space where he was supposed to have gotten married. He stopped for a moment, looking at the place. 1 year ago, that place had been the scene of the worst and best day of his life. Worst because he had discovered a devastating truth. Best because he had found the courage to change the course of his future. He continued walking, Buddy by his side, the mountains in the background beginning to be painted with the colors of the sunset. Life, Michael thought, was strange and unpredictable. You never knew where it would take you, what unexpected turns you'd take, what difficult lessons it would teach you. But it also had beauty. It had new beginnings. There was a possibility of finding something real after living so long in illusions. When he arrived at Emily's house, she opened the door with a smile that was pure and unmasked. Daisy ran up to Buddy, and the two dogs immediately started playing. "Come in," said Emily, accepting the bottle of wine. "The lasagna is almost ready." Michael entered, and the smell of home-cooked food, the sound of soft music playing, Emily's genuine laughter as she told about something funny that had happened at school, all of this combined into a moment of deep contentment. It wasn't the dramatic, overwhelming happiness he thought he would have with Jessica. It was something better. It was real. And as they sat down to dinner, talking about nothing and everything, Michael realized he had finally left the past behind. Not forgotten, because experiences shape us, and we need to remember the lessons learned. But he had stopped being defined by it. Jessica had tried to destroy him. She had lied, betrayed, manipulated, used. But in the end, she had only freed him, freed from the expectations of perfection, freed from dangerous naivety, freed from the need to always please. He was stronger now, wiser, more careful about who he let into his life. But he was also more open to genuine joys, to true connections, to real possibilities. Life had given him the worst kind of surprise a year ago, and now, slowly, it was giving him another kind of surprise. A good surprise, a surprise that whispered there was still much ahead, that better stories were waiting to be written. 3 months had passed since that dinner at Emily's house. The friendship between them had deepened naturally, without forcing anything. They spent more and more time together, but always keeping the agreement not to push for anything beyond what both were ready to give. Michael had noticed, however, that his feelings were changing. It wasn't just friendship he felt anymore. When he saw Emily, his heart beat a little faster. When she laughed at something he said, he felt warmth in his chest. When they said goodbye, he kept thinking about when they would see each other again. But he was still afraid to take a risk, afraid of being hurt again, afraid of ruining something good by wanting to turn it into something more. It was Dave who finally confronted him about this during one of the Sunday soccer games. "Dude, when are you going to stop stalling?" said Dave while they drank water during the break. "What are you talking about?" "About Emily. It's obvious you're in love with her, and from what I saw when I ran into you at that bookstore last week, she's interested too. We're just friends, Dave." "Michael, seriously, you're still going to use that excuse? Look, I understand the trauma of what happened with Jessica, but you can't let that viper steal the rest of your life too. Emily is not Jessica, not even close." "I know that." "Then do something, before she decides you're not interested and moves on." Those words kept hammering in Michael's head for the rest of the day. What if Dave was right? What if he was missing the chance for something real because he was too stuck in the past? That night, he decided to do something he hadn't done in a long time. He wrote. He took paper and pen, didn't type on the computer or phone, but wrote by hand, like people used to do before. He wrote a letter to Emily. It wasn't a dramatic declaration of love. It was an honest letter, talking about his fears, his hesitations, but also about what he felt, about how her company had become essential in his life, about how he wanted to see where that could lead if she was willing to try. It took 3 attempts until he was satisfied with the text. Then he folded the letter carefully and put it in an envelope. The next day, which was Thursday, book club day, Michael arrived early at the bookstore. Mrs. Elizabeth was alone, organizing new books that had arrived. "Michael, what a surprise to see you so early. The meeting doesn't start for another hour." "I know, Mrs. Elizabeth. Actually, I came to talk to you about something." "Go ahead, my son." Michael took a deep breath. "It's about Emily." Mrs. Elizabeth smiled, that wise smile of someone who has seen a lot in life. "Oh, finally. I was wondering how long you two would pretend to be just friends." Michael laughed, somewhat embarrassed. "Is it that obvious?" "Dear, for those who have eyes to see, it's crystal clear. You look at each other in a special way. The way she smiles when you speak, how you pay attention to every word she says. It's beautiful to see." "I wrote her a letter." Michael showed the envelope. "But I don't know if I should give it to her. What if it ruins everything? What if she doesn't feel the same?" Mrs. Elizabeth walked over to Michael and took his hands in hers, wrinkled but firm hands. "My son, let me tell you something I've learned in 70 years of life. We regret the chances we didn't take much more than those we took that didn't work out. If you don't try, you'll always be wondering what if, and that's a worse prison than any rejection. But what if? No what ifs. Give her this letter, be honest, and let her decide. Emily is an intelligent and sensitive woman. Even if she's not ready for something more right now, she'll appreciate the honesty, and you can talk about it like adults. But my impression, and I'm rarely wrong about these things, is that she'll be very happy." Michael put the letter in his pocket and helped Mrs. Elizabeth organize the books while they waited for the other club members to arrive. When Emily entered, promptly at 7, Michael felt his heart race. She was wearing a wine-colored sweater and jeans, her hair a bit messy as if she had just arrived from work without time to fix it. She looked beautiful. "Hi," she came to him with a smile. "You're early today." "I am." "I was eager to see everyone." Michael corrected himself, but saw Mrs. Elizabeth's small smile watching from afar. The club meeting was lively, discussing a contemporary American novel that had divided opinions. Emily and Michael, as always, had complementary views that fueled the discussion. When the meeting ended and people began to disperse, Michael approached Emily. "Can you wait a bit? I want to give you something." "Of course." They waited until they were the last ones there, Mrs. Elizabeth diplomatically pretending to be busy in the back of the bookstore. Michael took the envelope from his pocket and his hands trembled slightly. "I wrote this for you. You don't have to read it now if you don't want to. You can read it at home, calmly, and then we can talk about it if you want to talk." Emily took the envelope, looking at it with curiosity and something that seemed like hopeful apprehension. "Can I know what it's about?" "It's about us, about how I feel, about possibilities." Emily looked into his eyes, and Michael saw understanding there. She gave a small, almost shy smile. "Michael, can I tell you a secret?" "Sure. I also wrote something for you. It's in my bag. I was trying to decide whether to give it to you today or wait a bit longer." Michael blinked, surprised. "Really?" Emily laughed, a musical sound that filled the bookstore. "Really? I think we were both being cowards in the same way." She took her bag and pulled out an envelope similar to his. "So," she said, handing the envelope to him, "how about we do this? We exchange letters, read them here and talk later. That way we don't have to spend the whole night anxiously waiting." Michael took her letter, feeling the weight of the paper, the importance of that moment. Agreed. They sat in nearby chairs, but not side by side, giving each other space and privacy to read. Michael opened Emily's envelope carefully, as if it contained something precious and fragile. Her handwriting was beautiful, slanted, feminine. And the words, "Michael, I'm not good at talking about feelings face to face. As a literature teacher, I've always found it easier to express myself through the written word than the spoken one. These months getting to know you have been some of the best I've had in years. You reminded me that it's possible to connect with someone for real, without games, without masks. Your honesty, your kindness, your strength in dealing with everything you've been through, all of that inspires me. But I need to confess that what I feel for you crossed the boundary of friendship some time ago. I try to deny it. I try to tell myself it's too early, that we both need time. But the heart doesn't follow logic, does it? When we're together, I feel like I can be completely myself. You see me, Michael, you really see me. Not an idealized or fantasized version, but who I really am, with flaws and all, and you like me anyway. I don't know how you feel. Maybe you only see friendship. If that's the case, it's okay. She'll respect it and we'll continue being friends, because your presence in my life is too important to risk losing completely. But if you feel something similar, if there's a chance for us to see where this could lead, I'd really like to try. Without rush, without pressure, just see what happens when two people wounded by the past decide to take a risk in the present. With affection and a nervous hope, Emily Michael finished reading with tears in his eyes. They weren't tears of sadness, but of relief, of joy, of gratitude. He looked at Emily, who was still reading his letter, and waited. When she finished, she raised her eyes to him, and Michael saw that she also had tears streaming down her cheeks. "You too?" she asked, her voice choked. "Me too." They stood up simultaneously and hugged each other. It wasn't a passionate movie hug, but a comforting hug of mutual understanding, of two people who had weathered storms alone and now found shelter in each other. "So we try?" asked Michael, still holding her. "We try," agreed Emily. When they finally separated, Mrs. Elizabeth appeared with a huge smile and 3 glasses of wine. "Sorry for eavesdropping, but the walls are thin and I'm curious. This deserves a toast." They laughed and accepted the glasses, toasting to new beginnings, to second chances, to having the courage to take risks again. Michael left the bookstore that night holding hands with Emily, something simple but carrying enormous meaning. They walked through the streets of Aspen, talking about expectations, about fears, about how they wanted that relationship to be. "I want to take it slow," said Emily. "Not for lack of feeling, but because I want to do it right. I want to build something solid, not rushed." "I completely agree. No rush. Just truth. Total honesty, always. If something bothers us, we talk about it. If there's doubt, we discuss it. No holding grudges or games." Perfect. When they reached the corner where they would have to part ways to go to their respective homes, they stayed there for a few more minutes, reluctant to end that night. "Can I kiss you?" asked Michael, because it was important for him to ask to confirm consent. Emily smiled. "Yes, you can." The kiss was gentle, careful, full of silent promises. It wasn't a desperate kiss of overwhelming passion, but a kiss that said, "I choose you, I see you, I want to be here." When they separated, both were smiling. "So, I'll see you Saturday?" asked Emily. "Saturday. We can have that picnic you wanted, if the weather permits." Perfect. Michael floated back home. Buddy greeted him enthusiastically, and Michael knelt down to hug the dog. "I think we're truly starting over, Buddy," he said, and Buddy licked his face as if in complete agreement. In the following months, Michael and Emily's relationship blossomed organically and naturally. There were challenges, of course. Michael sometimes found himself looking for signs of betrayal or lies, where none existed, a reflection of his trauma with Jessica. When that happened, he would talk openly with Emily about his fears, and she was patient and understanding. Emily had her moments too, times when she would emotionally withdraw, a defense mechanism she had developed in her previous relationship. But she also opened up to Michael, explaining what she felt, and they worked together to overcome these barriers. Communication was key. They talked about everything, the big things and the small things. There were no secrets, no lies, not even the little white ones people tell to protect each other. 1 year after that night at the bookstore, Michael was in a suit again, nervous, adjusting his tie. But it was different this time. The nervousness was good. It was from happy anticipation, not anxiety. He was at Emily's house waiting for her to finish getting ready for Mrs. Elizabeth's birthday party. It was a formal occasion, and Emily had insisted they both dress up to honor the lady who had done so much for them. When Emily came out of the bedroom, Michael lost his breath. She wore an elegant navy blue dress, her hair styled in a sophisticated bun. She was beautiful, but more than that, she was radiant with genuine happiness. "You look perfect," Michael said, stepping closer. "You don't look so bad yourself." Emily smiled, straightening his tie. Ready to go? Ready. The party was at the bookstore itself, which Mrs. Elizabeth had closed for the occasion. It was decorated with tiny lights, there was soft music, delicious food, and all the members of the book club were present, along with the birthday lady's friends and family. Mrs. Elizabeth was beaming, moving among the guests, thanking everyone for coming. When she saw Michael and Emily arriving together, her face lit up even more. "My favorite couple," she hugged them tightly. "Thank you for coming." "We wouldn't miss it for the world," Emily said, handing over a beautifully wrapped gift. The party was wonderful. Michael talked with people he had met through the book club, made new friends, laughed a lot. But the best moment was when Mrs. Elizabeth asked for everyone's attention to give a brief speech. 70 years, she began, her voice steady despite the emotion. 70 years of life, of experiences, of joys and sorrows. And if I could sum up what I've learned in all this time into one single lesson, it would be this. Love is possible at any stage of life, and it often comes when we least expect it and need it most. She looked directly at Michael and Emily. "I see young couples here today who fill me with hope, couples who have suffered, who have been hurt, but who had the courage to try again, who chose honesty over convenience, who built their relationships on solid foundations of friendship and respect. You are an inspiration." There was applause, and Michael felt Emily squeeze his hand. Later, as they were leaving, Mrs. Elizabeth called Michael aside. "Can I give you some unsolicited advice, my son?" "Always, Mrs. Elizabeth. Don't let the past dictate your future. You found something special with Emily, something real. When the right time comes, don't be afraid to take the next step. Not because of external pressure or social timelines, but because your heart tells you it's time. How will I know when it's the right time? You'll know, we always know. And this time, unlike the other, it will be a decision based on real knowledge of the person, not on illusions or masks. That makes all the difference." Michael thought a lot about those words in the following days. His relationship with Emily was at an excellent point. They had moved in together 3 months ago, renting a small house with a garden where the dogs could run freely. Their cohabitation was harmonious, comfortable, full of small moments of everyday joy. But Michael wasn't in a hurry to get married. The idea of marriage still carried painful memories, still associated in his mind with fraud and betrayal. It was Emily who started the conversation on a quiet evening while they were having dinner on the porch. "Michael, can I ask you something?" "Always." "How do you feel about marriage? In general, I mean. I'm not asking or suggesting anything. Just curious about your thoughts." Michael set down his fork and thought carefully before answering. "Honestly, for a long time, the idea of marriage made me sick. It was so associated with what happened with Jessica. But lately, I've realized that wasn't about marriage. It was about marrying the wrong person for the wrong reasons. And now? How do you feel now? Now, with you, the idea doesn't scare me as much. I still don't know if I want to get married, but it's not out of fear or trauma. It's more, I want to be sure it's for the right reasons. I want it to be a conscious choice, not something we do because it's expected, or because we've been together for X amount of time." Emily nodded, seeming satisfied with the answer. "I think similarly. I don't need a piece of paper to validate what we have, but I'm not against the idea either, you know. I think when the time is right, we'll both know." And so, without pressure or fixed expectations, they continued building their life together. Michael was promoted again at work, taking over as regional manager for the entire Rocky Mountains. Emily received an award for Teacher of the Year at her school, a recognition that filled her with pride. Together, they adopted another dog from the shelter where Michael volunteered, a border collie puppy they named Rocky. The house became noisier, messier, more full of life. It was on an ordinary day, 2 years after that wedding that didn't happen, that Michael finally felt the past had truly been left behind. He was walking with Emily and the 3 dogs through the park, enjoying a sunny Saturday. They passed by the event space that had been the venue for the cancelled wedding, and Michael found himself looking at it without any chest pain, without anger, without bitterness, just neutrality. "Are you okay?" asked Emily. noticing where he was looking. "I am. And you know what's funny? I'm grateful." "Grateful?" "Yes. Grateful for what happened. Because if it hadn't happened, I would have married her, would have spent years trapped in a toxic relationship, would have missed the chance to meet you, to have this life. The worst day of my life ended up being a gift in disguise." Emily kissed him softly. "I'm grateful too. For my story, which brought me here. For the difficult things that made us who we are. For us finding each other when we were both ready for something real." They continued walking, and Michael felt absolute clarity. He knew what he wanted to do, the next step he wanted to take, not out of pressure or expectation, but because his heart said it was right. 3 months later, on an ordinary Thursday night after a book club meeting, Michael proposed to Emily. It wasn't dramatic or elaborate. They were sitting on their favorite bench in the park, just talking about the book they had discussed, when Michael simply said, "Marry me." Emily stopped mid-sentence, looking at him in surprise. "What?" Michael took her hand, no ring, no rehearsed speech, just truth. "Marry me, Emily. Not because it's expected, not because we've been together for X amount of time, but because I love you, I trust you, and I want to make official what we already have. I want to build the rest of my life with you, face challenges together, celebrate victories together. You make me a better, more complete person. So will you marry me?" Emily had tears in her eyes but was smiling. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." They kissed right there, on the park bench. No spectators, no cameras, no production. Just the two of them and the decision to commit to each other. "Let's do it differently this time," said Michael. "Something small, intimate, only people who truly matter. No big productions, no stress. Just us celebrating our love with those we love." "Perfect," Emily agreed. The wedding took place 6 months later, in a small ceremony in Mrs. Elizabeth's garden, who had been extremely emotional when she found out it would be there. There were only 30 guests, close family and true friends. Michael wore a simple suit, Emily an elegant but understated white dress. There were no traditional groomsmen or bridesmaids, but Dave was there, as was Linda from the animal shelter, Jason, and of course Mrs. Elizabeth. There was no traditional officiant. Instead, each guest read a short reflection on love, commitment, and companionship. When it was time for the vows, Michael and Emily spoke freely, without memorized scripts. "Emily," Michael began, holding her hands, "3 years ago, I was standing at a different altar, about to make the biggest mistake of my life. Today, I'm here, and I have no doubt, no fear, no hesitation. You're not perfect, I'm not perfect, but we're perfect together. I promise to honor you, respect you, love you, see you, truly see you, every day. I promise honest communication. I promise to work through challenges together. I promise to never give you reason to doubt me. You saved me, not in a dramatic way, but in a real way, showing me that true love exists. Thank you for choosing to build a life with me." Emily wiped away tears before speaking. "Michael, you came into my life at a time when I had given up on finding something real. You showed me it's worth taking risks, that vulnerability isn't weakness, that love doesn't have to be complicated or painful. I promise to be your safe harbor, just as you are mine. I promise truth, even when it's hard. I promise to celebrate your victories and stand by you in tough times. I promise to build a life that's ours, not the way others expect, but the way that makes us happy. I love you and I choose you, every day." There was no, "You may kiss the bride," just a natural and spontaneous kiss as guests applauded and cried. The reception was a relaxed barbecue in the same garden, with soft music, deep conversations, and genuine laughter. Buddy, Daisy, and Rocky ran freely among the guests, stealing pieces of meat when no one was looking, causing general laughter. Michael observed everything from that moment, recording every detail in his memory. His mother was chatting animatedly with Emily's mother, who had come from Chicago especially for the ceremony. His father was in charge of the barbecue, a role he took on with pride and seriousness, ensuring every cut of meat was perfectly cooked. Dave approached with 2 beers, handing one to Michael. "So, man, How does it feel to be a married man?" Michael took a sip and smiled. "Different, very different from last time. This time I feel peace. I feel it's right." "That's because it is right, man. Anyone with eyes can see how good you are together. Emily makes you happy in a way that the other one never did." "I know, and it's funny, you know. 3 years ago, if someone had told me I'd be here, married to an amazing woman, truly happy, I wouldn't have believed it. That day at the altar, when everything fell apart, I thought my life was over, but it was actually just beginning." "Exactly." Emily approached, hugging Michael from behind. "What are you two talking about?" "About how lucky you are to have won me over," joked Michael, turning to kiss her. "Oh yes, of course, because I was the one chasing after you," Emily retorted, laughing. "Technically, both of you wrote letters," Dave reminded them. "It was a tie." The three laughed, and Michael felt flooded with gratitude. Gratitude for those friends, for that woman by his side, for that life he had built after almost being destroyed. The party continued late into the night. Mrs. Elizabeth told stories from her youth, making everyone laugh with her adventures. Jason taught some dance steps he learned in Denver, resulting in an impromptu dance floor in the garden. Linda brought photos of all the animals that had been adopted from the shelter in the past year, including Buddy and Rocky, celebrating every happy ending. When the guests finally began to leave, each hugged Michael and Emily with words of affection and blessings. They weren't necessarily religious blessings, but sincere wishes for happiness and prosperity. Mr. Robert was one of the last to leave, hugging his son tightly. "Son, today was perfect. Simple, genuine, full of love. That's how marriage should always be." "Thank you, Dad, for everything. For supporting me 3 years ago, for not letting me give up, for always being here." "That's what family is for, Michael, and now your family has grown." Robert looked at Emily affectionately. "Welcome officially, my daughter." Mrs. Barbara also hugged them both, crying happy tears. "My children, you are going to be very happy. I know it in my heart. And when challenges come, because they always do, remember what you have. Remember this love." When they were finally alone, Michael and Emily sat on the same bench where he had proposed to her, watching the stars beginning to appear in the sky. "It was perfect," said Emily, resting her head on his shoulder. "It was. Everything I wanted, and nothing I didn't." "Michael, can I ask you a question?" "Always." "Do you still think about her? About Jessica?" Michael thought before answering, wanting to be completely honest. "Sometimes, not with anger or pain like before, but yes, I still do. More as a reminder of a lesson learned than anything else." "Why? Does it bother you?" "No, I just wanted to know. I think it would be strange if you never thought about her, you know. She was an important part of your life, your story. She shaped who you are today. And you? Do you still think about your ex?" "Sometimes too. But like you said, without pain, just acknowledgement that it was part of the journey, that I needed to go through that to get here." They stayed there in comfortable silence for a few more minutes before heading home. Their home now, no longer Michael's house or Emily's house, but the home they had built together. The following months brought a peaceful and happy routine. Michael continued to excel at work. Emily had been invited to coordinate the school's literature department. Together they traveled through the southern region of the United States, discovering new places, creating memories. But life, as always, had its own surprises in store. It was on an ordinary Thursday afternoon, almost 4 years after that cancelled wedding, that Michael received an unexpected call. It was a number he didn't recognize, but it had the area code for Aspen. "Hello? Michael, is that you?" The voice was female, older, tired. It took Michael a second to recognize it. "Mrs. Deborah." "Yes. Michael, I know I have no right to call, but I need to talk to you. It's important." Michael felt his stomach tighten. He hadn't had any contact with Jessica's family since the end of the legal process years ago. "About what?" "About Jessica. She is very sick, Michael. Cancer. They found out 6 months ago. It's already in an advanced stage." Michael fell silent, processing that information. He felt a strange mix of emotions. It wasn't happiness, definitely not. But it wasn't the pain he might have felt years ago either. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Deborah. She wants to talk to you. She's been asking constantly. She says she needs to apologize in person, that she needs to make peace before the end." Michael took a deep breath. "Mrs. Deborah, with all due respect, I don't know if it's a good idea. It was a long time ago. We've moved on. I've rebuilt my life." "I know, Michael, and I'm not asking for myself or for you. I'm asking for her. She's at peace with almost everything, but this situation with you, the way it ended, it haunts her. She's changed a lot, you know. The therapy, the consequences of everything she did, the illness. She's not the same person she was 4 years ago." Michael looked around the room, saw the photo of him and Emily at their wedding on the shelf, saw Buddy sleeping on the couch. He had built a good life, a happy life. Would revisiting that painful past be worth it? "I need to think. And talk to my wife." "Of course, I understand perfectly. My number is on your screen now. If you decide to come, please let me know. She's at home, not in the hospital. She wanted to spend her last times at home, with family." When Emily got home from work that night, Michael told her about the call. She listened in silence, holding his hand. "What do you want to do?" she asked when he finished. "I don't know. Part of me thinks I should leave the past in the past. But another part wonders if it wouldn't be important, not for her necessarily, but for me, to truly close that chapter." "There's no wrong answer here, Michael. It's your decision, and I'll support whatever you choose. Would you come with me if I decide to go?" Emily looked surprised. "You want me to go?" "Yes, because you're my wife, because you're part of my life now, and because I think I need your strength to do this." "Then I'll go." "Of course I will." Michael spent the next 2 days thinking, weighing the options. He talked to Dave, who advised caution but understanding. He talked to his father, who said forgiveness was a powerful thing, both for the one who forgives and the one who is forgiven. Finally, Michael called Mrs. Deborah and scheduled a visit for the following Saturday. The day arrived cloudy, with that characteristic August chill in Aspen. Michael was nervous, and Emily noticed, keeping the conversation light during the drive to the house where Jessica lived with her parents. The house was the same one Michael had visited several times during their relationship, but it seemed smaller now, more worn. Mrs. Deborah greeted them at the door, visibly thinner and aged. "Michael, thank you for coming, and you must be Emily." She extended her hand to Emily, who accepted it with a gentle smile. "It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Deborah." "Please, come in. She's in her room. I made tea if you'd like." They entered, and the house was quiet, with that particular quality that homes with seriously ill people often have. It wasn't unpleasant, just different, as if even the air was waiting for something. Mr. Charles was in the living room, and he stood up when he saw Michael. "Michael, thank you for coming. I know it wasn't easy." "Mr. Charles," Michael shook the man's hand, noticing how he too seemed to have aged years in just a few years. "This is my wife, Emily." "Nice to meet you, and I'm sorry about the circumstances of our meeting." Mrs. Deborah returned with a tray of tea. "She's awake now if you'd like to go up. I'll take you." Michael looked at Emily, who nodded encouragingly. They went up the stairs behind Mrs. Deborah, each step feeling like it weighed a ton. Jessica's room was dimly lit, curtains half closed. She was in bed, propped up on pillows, and when Michael saw her, he had to hide his shock. Jessica was unrecognizable. The blonde hair that had always been her pride had fallen out from chemotherapy, was starting to grow back, but still very thin. She was extremely thin, her skin pale, with deep dark circles under her eyes. But it was her eyes that most caught Michael's attention. They were the same eyes, but there was something different about them, something that seemed like truth, perhaps, or real vulnerability. "Michael," her voice was weak, but she tried to smile. "You came." "I did." He approached, keeping a respectful distance, Emily by his side. "And you brought your wife?" "Yes, this is Emily." Jessica looked at Emily for a long moment, and something passed over her face. It wasn't exactly envy, but perhaps recognition of something she never had, and never would have. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Emily. Thank you for letting him come." "The pleasure is mine," said Emily, and her voice was kind, but not condescending. "Mrs." Deborah placed 2 chairs near the bed and discreetly left, closing the door behind her. Michael and Emily sat down, and for a moment no one spoke. It was Jessica who had requested this meeting, so Michael waited for her to begin. "I don't know where to start," Jessica finally said, her voice choked. "There's so much I wanted to say, so much I need to say." "Then start from the beginning," suggested Michael. Jessica nodded, picking up a glass of water from the bedside table with trembling hands. "Michael, I was awful to you, not just awful, I was monstrous. I used you, lied to you, cheated on you, made fun of you, and worse, I felt no remorse at the time. Not until everything came to light, until I faced the consequences." Michael said nothing, just listened. "When you exposed me at the wedding, my first thought was anger. Anger at you for humiliating me, anger at myself for getting caught. But not shame for what I had done. That came later, much later." She paused, breathing with difficulty, and Michael noticed the oxygen tank beside the bed. "The therapy I was forced to do as part of the sentence. At first I faked it, said what the therapists wanted to hear, but one therapist in particular, Dr. Patricia, she wouldn't accept my lies. She challenged me, forced me to really look at myself." Emily listened attentively, her hand in Michael's, giving him silent support. "I found out I have had, I don't know, narcissistic personality disorder. I always thought it was just confidence, you know, that I was just someone who knew what I wanted and went for it. But it was more than that. I couldn't feel real empathy, couldn't genuinely connect. I saw people as objects, as means to ends." Tears began to roll down Jessica's thin face. "And you, Michael, you were so good, so genuine, and I used you in the worst way possible. I looked you in the eye and lied repeatedly without any remorse. I even laughed at you behind your back. When I remember that now, I feel so ashamed I can barely breathe." Michael felt his own throat tighten. It wasn't exactly pity, but it was a recognition of shared humanity. Jessica was clearly suffering, and even after everything, he couldn't feel satisfaction in it. The lawsuit, the legal consequences, the social ostracism, all of that was awful, Jessica continued. But it was necessary. It was what broke me enough to really start changing. I continued therapy even after the legal requirement ended. I worked hard, really hard, to understand why I was the way I was, to change thought patterns I'd had since childhood. "And have you changed?" asked Michael, the first time he'd spoken since she began. "I'm trying. I still have selfish impulses. I still fight the tendency to manipulate. But now I recognize when I'm doing it. Now I feel real guilt, not just fear of getting caught. It's small progress, but it's something." She coughed, and Emily instinctively stood up, picking up the glass of water and offering it. Jessica thanked her with her eyes. "When I found out I was sick, my first thought was, this is punishment. Karma. Cosmic justice for everything I did. And maybe it is. I don't know. But what I do know is that I don't want to die carrying this weight of never having given you a real apology." "You've already apologized," Michael reminded her. "Several times during the trial." "No, I didn't. I said the words, but they meant nothing. It was just more manipulation, trying to get a lighter sentence. But now I'm asking for real. Michael, I'm truly sorry. More than words can express. I'm sorry for hurting you, for using you, for wasting 3 years of your life with lies. You deserved so much better, and you always did." Jessica's tears were flowing freely now, and she didn't try to hide them. "And Emily, I'm sorry to you too. I know it's strange to hear this from someone you don't know, but I'm sorry you had to carry the weight of my history with Michael. I know it probably affected your relationship, created insecurities, made you question things you shouldn't have had to question." Emily squeezed Michael's hand before responding. "I appreciate your apology, Jessica. And you're right, there were challenges, but Michael and I worked through them together. And in a strange sense, what happened to him made him the man he is today. A man who values honesty, who communicates openly, who isn't afraid of vulnerability. So I don't carry anger toward you." Jessica looked at Emily with something that seemed like admiration. "You're lucky, Michael. You found someone genuine." "I know," said Michael, and there was absolute truth in those words. They stayed a few more minutes, talking more lightly about random things. Jessica asked about Michael's work, about the dogs, about life in general. She seemed genuinely interested, not just making polite conversation. When she started to look visibly tired, Michael stood up. "We should go. We don't want to tire you out too much. Michael, before you go, one last thing. Do you forgive me? You don't have to answer now or ever, but I need to ask." Michael looked at that woman in the bed, so different from the person he had almost married. He looked at Emily beside him, solid and real. He thought about everything he had been through, all the growth, all the pain that had turned into strength. "Jessica, forgiveness is a process, not a moment. And honestly, much of that process I've already done over the years. I had to forgive, not for you, but for me to move forward. So yes, I forgive you. It doesn't mean I've forgotten. It doesn't mean what you did was okay. But it means I no longer carry anger or bitterness. You're human. You made terrible mistakes, but you're trying to do right now. And that counts for something." Jessica closed her eyes and more tears streamed down. "Thank you. I don't deserve it, but thank you." "Everyone deserves the chance to change," said Emily softly, "and peace in your final moments." They said their goodbyes, Jessica holding Michael's hand for a brief moment. "Be happy, Michael, truly happy. It's the least you deserve." "I am, and I wish the same for you, in the time you have left." They went downstairs and found Mrs. Deborah and Mr. Charles waiting anxiously in the living room. "How did it go?" asked Deborah. "It was good. Necessary, I think," replied Michael. "Thank you for calling me." "No, thank you for coming. I know it was a big ask." Charles shook Michael's hand again. "And Michael, for our records, we wanted you to know that we greatly admire how you handled that whole situation years ago. It was hard to see at the time, but you did the right thing. And we're happy to know you're doing well, that you're happy." Michael and Emily left the house, and neither of them spoke until they reached the car. Once inside, Emily asked, "How are you?" Michael thought for a moment. "Strange, sad for what she's going through, but also resolved. Finally closed. That chapter really ended now. You were generous in forgiving. It wasn't generosity, it was necessity. Carrying anger for years would hurt me more than it would hurt her. The forgiveness was a gift for myself, not for her." Emily kissed his cheek. "I love you. Did you know that?" "I do. And I love you too." 2 weeks later, Michael received another call. Jessica had passed away peacefully during the night, surrounded by family. The funeral would be in 2 days. Michael decided not to go. He had made his peace with Jessica while she was alive, had given her the forgiveness she needed. He didn't need the closure of a funeral. Instead, that day, he and Emily went to the park, sat on their favorite bench, and Michael spent a few minutes in silence, wishing peace for Jessica wherever she was. "Done," he said finally. "It's over. That chapter of my life is officially closed." Emily rested her head on his shoulder. "And now? What's the next chapter?" Michael smiled. "Ours. Whatever it is. No pre-written script, no rigid expectations. Just us, building day after day." The following months brought significant changes. The company where Michael worked was acquired by a larger corporation, and he was offered a transfer to a branch in San Diego with an even better position and a significant salary increase. This time, it was a joint decision. Michael and Emily sat down and discussed all the pros and cons. It would mean leaving Aspen, a city they both loved. It would mean Emily having to look for a new job. It would mean leaving close friends and family. But it also meant new opportunities, new experiences, growth both professionally and personally. After many conversations and careful planning, they decided to accept. Emily secured a position at an excellent private school in San Diego. They sold the house with the garden and moved to an apartment with an ocean view. The farewell to Aspen was bittersweet. Mrs. Elizabeth cried, but she was also happy for them. Dave promised to visit them whenever possible. Linda from the animal shelter made them promise they would continue volunteering wherever they were. The move was tiring but exciting. San Diego was different from Aspen, warmer, busier, with a different culture. But it was also beautiful, full of possibilities. Michael and Emily adapted quickly. They made new friends, discovered new favorite places, built a new routine. The three dogs loved the beach, and morning walks on the sand became a daily ritual. It was during one of these walks, almost 5 years after that cancelled wedding, that Emily made an announcement that would change everything again. "Michael, I need to tell you something." "Go ahead." "I'm pregnant." Michael stopped in the middle of the walk, turning to face her. "What, seriously?" "Seriously, I found out yesterday, but I wanted to be sure before telling you. I took 3 tests, all positive, and I went to the doctor this morning. I'm 6 weeks along." Michael couldn't hold back the tears that started to flow. He pulled Emily into a tight hug, laughing and crying at the same time. "We're going to be parents? We're going to be parents." The dogs, sensing the emotion, began to jump and bark, turning that moment into a chaotic and perfect celebration. The pregnancy was smooth, without complications. Michael went to the ultrasound, saw the tiny heart beating on the screen, felt an instant connection with that little being who wasn't even born yet. They found out it would be a girl, and they spent weeks discussing names, wanting something meaningful but not complicated. "What about Deborah?" Michael suggested one night. Emily looked at him surprised. "Like Jessica's mother." "Not for her specifically, but that woman went through so much. Saw her daughter do terrible things, had to deal with the consequences, lost her daughter to cancer. And through all of this, he maintained dignity and tried to do what was right. I think there's strength in that. And Deborah means light, clarity. It seems appropriate for our daughter, who is bringing new light to our lives." Emily thought for a moment and then smiled. "Deborah Henderson. It has a nice sound." "It does." Deborah was born on a clear October morning, weighing 7 pounds, with a strong cry that announced her arrival to the world. Michael held that tiny baby and felt something fundamentally shift inside him. It wasn't that he didn't love Emily, but it was a different love, fierce and protective in a way he had never experienced. Emily, exhausted but radiant, held her daughter and cried tears of pure joy. "She's perfect." Yes, completely perfect. The first months with Deborah were challenging. Sleepless nights, constant worries, adapting to a new routine, but they were also magical. Every smile from Deborah, every new sound she made, every developmental milestone was celebrated as the miracle it was. Michael became that dad everyone jokes about, taking hundreds of photos, showing the baby to anyone who had the patience to look. But he didn't mind. He was genuinely passionate about his daughter, amazed by the life he and Emily had created. 1 year after Deborah's birth, on her birthday, Michael and Emily threw a small party. Dave came from Aspen with his wife and young son. Jason also came, bringing his new girlfriend, Mrs. Elizabeth couldn't make the trip due to her age, but sent gifts and a beautiful letter. Michael and Emily's parents were there, taking turns holding their granddaughter, competing for her attention in an adorable way. When everyone had left and Deborah was asleep, Michael and Emily sat on the apartment balcony, listening to the sound of the waves. "Are you happy?" asked Emily. "Incredibly so." "You?" "More than I ever imagined possible." Michael took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "You know, I sometimes think about what would have happened if things had been different, if I hadn't overheard that conversation, if I had married Jessica, if I had kept living that lie. And what do you conclude?" "That I would have been miserable, probably still stuck, unhappy, without even fully realizing how much I was being used. I would never have met you. I would never have Deborah. I would never have this life." "So you're grateful for what happened?" Michael thought carefully before answering. "I'm not grateful for the betrayal or the pain. I'll never be grateful for that. But I'm grateful for the lessons, for the strength I developed, for the clarity about what really matters. And I'm definitely grateful for ending up here with you, with our daughter, with this life. So yes, in a larger sense, I'm grateful. Emily kissed his cheek. Me too. For my own journey that brought me to you. For the mistakes and successes. For everything that shaped us into the people we are today. They stayed there longer in comfortable silence, just existing in the moment. Inside the apartment, Deborah slept peacefully. The dogs were scattered across the living room floor. It was a scene of quiet domesticity, nothing spectacular or dramatic. But it was everything. It was the life Michael had rebuilt from the ashes of that terrible day at the altar. It was proof that bad endings could turn into new beginnings. It was evidence that real love existed, as did resilience, growth, and redemption. 2 more years passed. Deborah grew from a baby into a toddler, talkative and curious, with her mother's dark hair and her father's eyes. Michael had been promoted again, now regional director. Emily had published her first book, a literature teaching guide for educators. They bought a house, not large but comfortable, with a yard for the dogs and Deborah. Buddy had aged gracefully, slower but still loyal. Daisy also showed signs of age. Rocky remained energetic, always ready to play with Deborah. Dave moved to San Diego too, his company opening a branch there. It was great to have his best friend nearby again, and his children got along well with Deborah. Life was good. Not perfect because perfection doesn't exist. There were challenges at work, occasional financial stress, the exhaustion of balancing parenting and careers. But they were normal challenges, faced together without lies or manipulations. It was on an ordinary evening, having dinner after Deborah had gone to sleep, that Emily brought up an idea she had been considering. "Michael, what do you think about us having another child?" Michael stopped with his fork in the air, surprised. "Another child now?" "Not right now exactly, but to start thinking about it. Deborah is going to be 3 years old. It would be a good spacing between them, and we always talked about wanting more than one child." Michael put his fork aside, thinking. "It's true, we always talked about it, and I would love to give Deborah a little brother or sister, but it's also a lot of work. You're building your career as a writer, I have a lot of responsibility at work. Would we have the time and energy for another baby?" "Those are valid concerns, but I also think there will never be a perfect time, you know. There will always be something, and our parents are getting older. I would like them to be able to enjoy their grandchildren while they still have health and energy." Michael nodded, seeing the logic. "You're right, and honestly, the idea of Deborah having a little brother makes me happy. Okay, let's try." Emily smiled, that smile that still made Michael's heart race. "So we're agreed. Let's try to expand the family." 5 months later, Emily was pregnant again. This time it was a boy, whom they named Ryan, the name of Emily's grandfather who had passed away years before. Ryan was born healthy and strong, with a cry even more powerful than his sister's. Deborah, now 3 years old, was fascinated by her little brother, always wanting to hold him and help. The house became more chaotic, noisier, more tiring, but also fuller of love, laughter, life. Michael looked at his family sometimes, almost not believing it was real. His beautiful and talented wife, his smart and funny daughter, his small and dependent son, his loyal dogs. It was everything he had imagined when he was younger, but better because it was real. 7 years after that day at the altar, Michael was sitting on the beach sand, watching the sunset. Deborah played near the water under Emily's watchful eye, who was holding Ryan. The dogs ran across the sand, chasing seagulls. His phone rang. It was a social media notification. Someone he hadn't been in contact with for years had tagged him in a post. Curious, Michael opened it. It was Jennifer, the ex-best friend of Jessica, one of the bridesmaids who had been involved in the scheme. The post was a long reflection on personal growth, about how she had spent years making the wrong choices, hurting people, living selfishly. It specifically mentioned Michael, not by name, but it was obvious who she was talking about, publicly apologizing for participating in the lie, for encouraging Jessica, for being an accomplice. Michael read the entire post feeling a mix of emotions. It wasn't anger. That had been a long time ago, and Jennifer had clearly changed just as Jessica had tried to change before passing away. He responded simply, "Thank you for the apology. I wish you all the best on your journey." It wasn't friendship. It wasn't complete reconciliation, but it was forgiveness. and forgiveness was enough. He put his phone away and turned his attention back to the sunset, to his family, to the present moment. There was beauty in letting the past be the past, in focusing on the here and now. Deborah came running up to him. "Daddy, look what I found." She showed a pretty shell she had found in the sand. "How beautiful, Princess. Shall we keep it to add to your collection?" "Yes, and Daddy, can I ask a question?" "You always can." "You and Mummy will be together forever, right?" Michael felt his heart tighten at the innocence of the question. "Yes, my love, forever." "How do you know?" "Because we choose each other. Every day we choose to be together, to take care of each other, to love each other. And those constant choices are what make forever happen." Deborah seemed satisfied with the answer and ran back to play. Emily approached, Ryan already sleeping in her arms. "What were you two talking about?" "About forever." "And what did you say?" "That we choose each other, every day." Emily leaned in and kissed Michael softly. "And I choose you, today and always." "I choose you too." The sun finally set completely, painting the sky in shades of orange, pink and purple. The stars began to appear one by one, and Michael thought how fitting it was. Even in the darkness there was light. There was always light if you knew where to look. His light had almost been extinguished years ago, nearly destroyed by lies and betrayal, but it had survived. It had grown. And now it shone brighter than ever, lighting up not only his life, but the lives of the people he loved. As they walked back home, Deborah holding one hand, Emily holding the other, Ryan sleeping in her arms, the dogs running ahead, Michael felt deep gratitude. Gratitude for the pain that had taught him strength. Gratitude for the betrayal that had taught him discernment. Gratitude for the terrible day that had led to all the wonderful days that followed. Life wasn't about avoiding falls. It was about learning to get back up. It wasn't about never being hurt. It was about healing and using the scars as reminders that he had survived. And above all, life was about choices. Michael had chosen to expose the truth when it would have been easier to pretend. He had chosen to sue when it would have been simpler to forget. He had chosen to forgive when it would have been more satisfying to hold a grudge. He had chosen to take a risk again with Emily when it would have been safer to stay alone. Every choice had led to this moment, to this family, to this life, and Michael wouldn't change a thing. Michael. Not even the painful beginning, because without it he wouldn't have this perfect present. Emily put Ryan in the crib when they got home. Deborah had already brushed her teeth and went to bed with a goodnight kiss. The dogs settled in their beds, tired from the day at the beach. Michael and Emily met in the bedroom, exhausted but content. "It was a good day," said Emily, lying down on the bed. "It was. They're all good days now. Even the difficult ones. Especially the difficult ones, because we face them together." Emily turned on her side to look at him. "Michael, do you ever regret it?" "What?" "Everything that happened. The public, dramatic way. If you could go back, would you do it differently?" Michael thought honestly about the question. "I don't know, maybe I could have done it less dramatically, but I also think it needed to be dramatic. Jessica was planning to keep using me for years. There were other people involved. If I had just quietly cancelled, she would have gotten away unscathed and kept doing the same to others. So no, I don't regret it. It was painful, it was embarrassing, it was hard, but it was honest. And honesty, however painful, is always better than comfortable lies. You're a wise man, Michael Henderson. Not wise, just someone who learned hard lessons the hard way." They fell asleep in each other's arms, and Michael dreamed of the future. He dreamed of Deborah growing up, of Ryan taking his first steps, of more adventures, more challenges, more victories. He dreamed of growing old with Emily, of seeing their children form their own families. And in dreams, just as in waking life, there was no fear. Only hope, love, and the certainty that no matter what came, they would face it together. The years kept passing, as years do. Deborah entered school and excelled, especially in reading, inheriting Emily's love for literature. Ryan revealed a talent for music, always singing and inventing melodies. Michael was promoted to vice president of the company, achieving professional dreams he didn't even know he had. Emily published 3 more books, becoming a reference in literary education in the United States. They had more challenges. Buddy passed away peacefully at 15, and the family cried together, honoring the dog that had been by Michael's side in the toughest moments. Daisy followed him a year later, and again the family united in grief, but also in celebration of lives well lived. They adopted 2 new dogs from the local shelter, continuing the tradition of giving homes to animals in need. Deborah and Ryan named them Bailey and Sunny, and the dogs brought new energy to the house. Michael and Emily's parents began showing signs of age, and Michael found himself in a new role, caring for those who had always cared for him. It was challenging, emotionally and logistically, but it was also an honor. It was the cycle of life, and Michael embraced it with the same honesty he had learned to embrace everything else. 10 years after that day at the altar, Michael was at an awards ceremony. His company was being honored for ethical business practices, and Michael, as vice president, was called to receive the award and give a speech. He stepped onto the stage to applause, looking out at the audience of hundreds of executives and business people. He saw Emily in the front row, smiling proudly. He saw Dave a few rows back, giving a thumbs up. "Good evening, everyone," Michael began. "It's an honor to receive this award on behalf of our company, but if you'll allow me, I'd like to talk not just about business practices, but about personal ethics, because I believe the two are intrinsically linked." He paused, gathering courage for what he was about to say. 10 years ago, I was about to make a big mistake. Not a professional one, but a personal one. I was about to marry someone who wasn't who I thought they were. And I found out, literally hours before the ceremony, that my entire life had been a lie. There was absolute silence in the hall now, everyone attentive. I had a choice at that moment. I could pretend I didn't know, go through with the wedding, keep up appearances. It would have been the easiest thing. Or I could do the hard thing, the painful thing, the embarrassing thing. I could choose honesty. I chose honesty, and it was the worst and best decision of my life. Worst because it was publicly humiliating, because it hurt in ways I can't describe. Best because it set me free. It freed me to find true love, to build a life based on truth, to become the person I am today. Emily was crying. He could see even from a distance. So, when I talk about ethical business practices, it's not just about following rules. It's about making hard choices when it would be easier to look the other way. It's about valuing integrity above profit, truth above convenience. Because those choices, those small ethical decisions we make every day, they add up. They define us. And I want to be defined, both personally and professionally, by honesty, by doing the right thing even when it's hard. Because in the end, that's what remains. Not the money, not the status, but character. And character is built one hard choice at a time. The applause was deafening when he finished. Several people came up to speak with him afterward, some sharing their own stories of difficult choices, others just expressing admiration. But the best part was when Emily hugged him afterward, whispering, "I'm so proud of you." Why? For finally speaking publicly about that? For turning trauma into wisdom, for using your story to help others, for being you. That night, lying in bed, Michael thought about how far he had come. From the broken man at the altar to the man who had just given that speech. From the man who had been manipulated to the man now respected for his integrity. It was a long journey with many difficult steps, but every step had been worth it. The final years of this story unfolded in relative calm. Deborah went to college to study journalism, wanting to tell true stories, perhaps influenced by her own parents' story. Ryan entered music conservatory, his passion turning into a vocation. Michael and Emily became parents of teenagers and then young adults, navigating new challenges but always maintaining open communication, always choosing honesty. Their parents aged, some passed away, leaving painful gaps, but also legacies of love and wisdom. Michael learned about mortality, about life cycles, about letting go while still holding precious memories. On an ordinary afternoon, 15 years after that day that changed everything, Michael was sitting on the same porch where he had lived when he met Emily, now visiting the old town. The apartment had new owners, but they kindly allowed him to stay there for a few minutes in nostalgia. Emily was by his side, her hair now with white strands she didn't try to hide, lines around her eyes that told stories of laughter and tears. "Do you remember when we lived here?" she asked. "Like it was yesterday. I was so lost, Emily, so broken, and you appeared with patience and kindness, showing me there was still beauty in the world. You weren't broken, you were hurt. But hurt and broken are different things. You always had strength inside you. You just needed time to reconnect with it." Michael took her hand, calloused now from life lived, but still fitting perfectly in his. "I'm grateful, you know, for everything. For the terrible day that set me free. For the painful lessons. For you. For our family. For this life I never imagined was possible." "Me too. And Michael." "Yes. If you had to do it all over again from the beginning, would you?" Michael thought about all the pains, all the challenges, all the tears. He thought about the day at the altar, about suing Jessica, about forgiving her. He thought about meeting Emily, about building trust, about risking again. He thought about Deborah and Ryan, about every moment of joy and difficulty. Without hesitation, he finally answered, "I'd do it all the same. Because everything, absolutely everything, led to here. And here is exactly where I want to be." Emily smiled, that smile that still made him feel like he was meeting her for the first time. "Then let's keep going. More years, more adventures, more life. Together." "Together," Michael agreed. "Always together." And as the sun set over San Diego, painting the sky with impossible colors, Michael Henderson felt complete peace. Peace that comes from living authentically, from loving genuinely, from choosing courage over convenience every day. The story that had begun with betrayal and pain had transformed into a tale of resilience, growth, and true love. It wasn't a fairy tale because it had been too real for that. But it was something better. It was real life, lived with intention, honesty, and an open heart. And in the end, that terrible day at the altar, that moment that had seemed like the end of everything, had been just the beginning. A painful beginning, yes, but a necessary one. Because sometimes you need to completely destroy the false to build the true. Michael had destroyed a life built on lies, and from the ashes he had built something real, solid, beautiful. Something that would be worth every tear, every moment of pain, every difficult choice. And as they walked back to the hotel where they were staying, Emily by his side, Michael knew with absolute certainty he had made the right choices. Not the easy ones, not the comfortable ones, but the right ones. And those choices had made all the difference. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story. Do you think Michael made the right choice by exposing Jessica publicly? Would you have the courage to do the same? Leave your honest opinion in the comments with sincere words. If you've been through something similar or know someone who has, share your experience. And if this story touched your heart in any way, don't forget to leave your like. Most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other emotional stories we'll tell. Your companionship means a lot to us. Thank you for listening until the end.